All right, welcome everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Corporation of Township of Puslinch on November 29th, 2023. I will start with roll call. Councilor Goyda.
Present.
Councilor Spoulos.
Present.
Councilor Bailey.
Here.
And Councilor Hurst.
Present.
Excellent. This will start our moment of reflection. All right, that concludes our moment of reflection. Ms. White, I have a resolution for the confirmation agenda, please.
The council approves the November 29th, 2023 agenda and addendum is circulated, and the council approves the addition to the agenda as follows. Consent item 6.1.6, questions received from council seeking additional information and the corresponding responses provided by staff.
Okay, move that, please. Councilor Spoulos, second by Councilor Hurst. Any questions or comments? All in favor? That's carried. Do we have any disclosure of pecuniary interest today? Well, seeing none. All right, next we'll move on to item 10.1. And I will ask our colleagues in the gallery to maybe come down at the table, please. We want to do the Lake Road first, or we want to get right into the, does it matter?
Up to you.
All that hard work takes up a little bit of room.
So gentlemen, what I'll ask is maybe just a round of introductions for the video and the people attending online, and then I feel like I want to just do the Lake Road reconstruction first. I think that conversation will be shorter than that way. If Mr. Kudo please leave unless he carpooled, he could. That gives him some options.
I think you carpool.
So you're here for the duration. Okay, well then it doesn't matter. And we'll just go in sequential order as the agenda. So introductions, please.
So my name is Earl Campbell. I'm the chair of the Police Services Board for Wellington County.
John Kudo, County Engineer in Wellington County.
Scott Wilson, Police Board Secretary and County CAO.
Good morning, Steve Thomas. I'm the Detachment Commander for Wellington County VP.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for coming today. We appreciate it. So I believe the first one is the presentation of the Police Service Board Chair, Earl Campbell, is what we have.
Yeah, so basically what our intention is this morning, so you were circulated the government's documents, you were circulated a Lake Road update in an email. Mapping of Lake Road, I believe, in pictures and the annual report. So I'm going to briefly go through the governance one. Inspector Thomas is going to go through the correspondence and the annual report. Mr. Kudo is going to go through the Lake Road. And Mr. Wilson said he won't say anything unless he has to. So he's basically here right today in this capacity of the Secretary of the Police Services Board, so not as the CEO of the county. Mind you, it's kind of hard to cover the part of county interests. So anyways, so we're happy to be here. So basically the first report that I'm going to go through, you guys have been given a copy of it. So I'm not going to read it to you. Basically, it lays out the responsibility for policing. The primary is crime prevention, law enforcement, assistance to victims of crime, public order, maintenance, and emergency response. Wellington County is a Section 10 PSB. So there's two types of police services board in the province. Section 10 specifically just means that we contract the OPP. In a nutshell, that's basically the way the structure is. So if you have OPP services, you're Section 10. We have a different set of rules. The PSB is an independent government for the police service. The current composition is one county councilor, which would be myself, which was elected by county council. The warden sits on the committee de facto. Then we have a civilian that's appointed by county council. His name's Alan Alsh from Erin. And then we have two provincial appointees that are supplied by the province. One is Ron Faulkner from Harrison, and the other one is Walter Fretchel from Mount Forest. So the north end of the county kind of has the bulk of the seats on the board, but that's the way the structure is. That may or may not change next year. They're bringing in a new Police Services Board Act. And we've had conflicting information, for lack of a better choice of words, as to what that composition is going to look like next year. But basically, that's the way it's structured. The board itself doesn't report to Wellington County Council. It's actually governed by the Ministry of Solicitor General and the Ontario Civilian Police Commission. So even though the funder for the program is Wellington County, it's not a subcommittee of Wellington County, like the library board would be or the roads board would be. It's actually totally independent. And the governing body is Solicitor General. The page 8 gives you that. Page 9 gives you tons of detail as to the duties of the board. And then the only other thing I want to highlight out of that package, because there's a lot of verbiage in there. But under the act, you need to establish a community safety and well-being plan. That's done by Safe Communities Wellington, and Sarah Bailey has just accepted the co-chair of that organization. So you guys are well represented in that field. So basically, that's all I've got to say on the document, unless you've got any specific questions on it.
One thing I would mention is in council chambers, I prefer if you recognize their title versus their first name, even though we all know each other on a first name basis. That's just.
All right, my apologies. Counselor, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, I believe Steve.
Yeah, I just want to start off by saying thank you for having me and thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and talk with you today. Back on November 2nd, there was some questions posed by this council to through the board to me about some questions about speed limit changes and some things with regards to Puss Lynch. I provided those responses through Mr. Chair back on November 2nd. So if you've had an opportunity to read those questions and answers, I provided some data in there, talking about how our speed data is collected. I did a breakdown for you of traffic complaints in Puss Lynch year to date as of October the 23rd. And put it in graph form there. We also gave you some data about the black cats that have been deployed in Puss Lynch. I can report that recently we had one deployed on Lake Road in the 70 zone, and just this past week we have one up in the 50 zone. I believe it came down on Monday, but haven't had an opportunity to really study that data yet, but that will be shared. So we have done the Lake Road 50 and 70 areas. I'm happy to report that we also did a commercial motor vehicle safety blitz on November 20th, last Monday. I have the results here to share. Our officers did 26 commercial vehicle inspections that day with 8 out of service for a 32.5% out of service rate. There was 19 highway traffic act charges laid and actually 1 criminal code charge laid. There was a 145-day impound and 1 plate seizure. So, we always look at those results as sort of a good and bad thing. Good in the sense that they were able to come and, remove 8 potentially unsafe vehicles from the roadways. Bad that they're out there to begin with, right? So we're fortunate to have, we just changed a second, so we have 2 commercial motor vehicle inspectors on our staff. We're fortunate to have those in the county, and they work together with our partners in that field. So they'll often work with Halton and Guelph and MTO, and they put together these safety blitzes periodically throughout the county. And as you see, the one last week in Puss Lynch they did some good work there. So that's the commercial motor vehicle piece. We will continue to do that. Our 2 inspectors are very passionate about that work that they do, looking at the commercial motor vehicles throughout the county. Was there any specific questions regarding the answers provided to the first set of questions that I responded to on November 2nd?
Well, these all go around each council member. I'm sure they've
Sure.
brought some notes with them. So
Okay.
as soon as you're,
Would you like me to answer the questions that were just provided this week? Like I can.
well, they're included in the agenda. I would maybe look at council. Would you like him to go through them or?
So through Mr. Chair, I believe they were submitted by a member of council, and there may be those questions posed during the roundtable. Yeah.
I think we can just wait.
Okay, so I'm happy to take questions based on the documents provided. That might be easier instead of me. Yeah. So happy to take your questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Inspector. Just for some clarity, when you're doing the commercial motor vehicle list, did that include weighing the vehicles? I know we do have portable scales, just don't know if they were.
We do that, you know, to be honest, that's a good question. I'm not sure. But I will follow up on that. I'm not sure if they were weighing the trucks or not, but that's certainly something I'll follow up on for you.
Cause, I know me personally, I'm curious to see how compliant our, operators are in the township, because you're operating on local roads, and if you're running overweight, that will lead to degradation of the road at a faster point than what, you know, our asset management plans are thinking for, scheduling for replacement. So it's imperative to me that they're running legal weight. The last thing I want to ask you before I open up to council is, you mentioned it though, MTO assists, but does MTO lead these commercial motor vehicles, or what's MTO's role on the enforcement side? Are they more focused on, say, provincial right of ways where they have the inspection stations, or do they operate holistically across the province, or?
I would say that that's probably a question for MTO, but that being said, you know, when our officers are organizing a targeted enforcement event, they will call upon their partners, including MTO, to come and for example, the one last week was specifically for Puslinch, right? So, I mean, that's not provincial roadways that we're dealing with. Our MTO partners still come and, we did one in Arthur last year, same thing, or earlier this year. We do partner. As far as what their particular focus is, I mean, that's a question for them, but I will say that, we do try to partner with them to, just to have, a number of inspectors available for the days that we do those safety blitzes. So we do reach out to our surrounding, law enforcement partners to do that. So it makes for a more successful day, the more vehicles that can get inspected.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Councilor Goyda?
Thank you. Firstly, I just wanted to say thank you all for being here and the opportunity to share information and ask questions. If I'm correct, I do believe that when I first came on council, the exercise of having the annual report presented at council was a practice that was in place, but then COVID happened and that kind of went to the wayside. It's great to have you, and moving forward, hopefully that's something that we can continue to build on. So I do have a few questions, which are, I think, more just maybe to help me understand, and maybe members of the public as well. My first question, it comes from the annual report and the chart in that report where it outlines all the Black Cat speed monitoring data. And I guess I don't fully understand how the data is translated, but what stands out to me is the column that determines where it says recommended enhanced enforcement, and it's either a yes or no. Can you just help me understand what does enhanced enforcement look like, and
Sure.
What criteria are you drawing from this data that would determine either a yes or no answer?
Sure, thank you for your question. So our Black Cat program, Black Cats are speed monitoring devices. They're highly effective in analyzing speed of traffic. We can covertly deploy them, meaning, when a police car is parked on your road, people tend to slow down, so you don't truly get an accurate picture of what's happening. So we are able to deploy these Black Cat devices in various areas around the county, and that gets sort of a true picture of what's happening as far as traffic, and we collect the number of vehicles that pass by in the given period of time that they're deployed, and it gives us the speed analysis. So from that, and I will explain a little further in a minute, that we are growing our program. So typically, what happens is we get the speed analysis, and we are looking at specifically with the speed at the 85th percentile. And what that means is, you have your volume of traffic. So however, many hundreds or thousands of vehicles have passed by that speed measuring device in that given period of time. The 85% of those vehicles are doing a certain speed or under, right? So if you're looking at just speed alone, we've determined that 15 kilometers per hour over the speed limit is what we're targeting. If it's more than that with the 85th percentile, then we will do enhanced enforcement. But I just want to point out, like, speed is not the only factor. We also look at collision data, because we want to make sure our resources are having an impact on road safety, right? So we do take a look at, okay, there's, the speed is this on this particular road, but how many collisions have we had on that road in the last 5 years? So we take a look at that. And then what's not in the chart, we also look at the number of complaints we get in those certain areas. So it's a combination of those factors that determine if we should spend more time or focus some more attention on a particular area. That being said, where we're growing our program is that it's fine and well that we've identified somewhere that needs enhanced enforcement, but what are we doing? And how can we capture those results as to what that is what that looks like? So we are adding that in the probably by the next police board in January, we will be reporting on results. So for example, on the last police board report in November, concession 1 in Puss Lynch was identified. So our traffic unit has been spending some time down there doing some enforcement. So I plan to present those results at the next police report. So going forward, if you see somewhere marked for enhanced enforcement, either the next one or the one after that, depending on when we get the data, we will report back on, okay, well, here's the activity we took in that particular area. And then eventually we'd like to even grow the program even further to see if what we're doing actually is having an impact in that particular area.
If I might add to that, Mayor Sealer, so to Councilor White's question. What the Police Services Board has asked the OPP to do is actually come up with a formal policy that says if a black cat indicates enhanced enforcement, this is what it's actually going to look like. So there's going to be repeat visits. There's going to be another black cat installed to see if they modify the behavior, that type of thing. So he's going to be working on that for, I believe, January's agenda to say this is what the draft policy would look like. And then we'll be able to farm it. What's happened historically is it said enhanced enforcement, and we move on to the next black cat report, and nobody ever comes back and says, well, this is what we did. So there will be a protocol that they need to follow with reasonable timelines for enforce the traffic officers in the area, second black cat installed, all that type of thing is going to be addressed as part of that policy. The other thing to Councilor Gordon's comment about the annual report, that did slip off through COVID. We were actually late getting it out this year. That's been discussed as well, and part of the new strategy for communications that the OPP is working on. I believe that's coming to January's board meeting as well. Is that the annual report comes out in February? The intent, starting 2024, is to actually distribute that to the lower tier municipalities again, as historically has been done, with a letter offering to do a delegation, not this size of a delegation necessarily, maybe the inspector or a designate to actually come to the local council meeting and discuss the annual report, if that council so inclined.
Great, thank you, that's good. And my very next question was gonna be, how is it determined if enhanced enforcement has been effective in reducing speed? So you answered that question without me having to ask it. Okay, so again, drawing data from the 2022 report, and also some of the monthly reports I was able to take a look at. It appears that based on the info that I was able to find, in many cases in the township of Puss Lynch, when a black cat is deployed, oftentimes the result does say that enhanced enforcement is recommended. And so, in addition to the ones on that annual report, it showed the same result for concession 4, concession 7, Wellington 34, Wellington 36, concession 1. And so I don't know if you can answer this, but just from a high sort of level, it suggests that maybe there's more enforcement in general required in the township of Puss Lynch, and maybe that's not true. I don't know how those results compare to other municipalities, but I guess what I am curious about is that information that's collected considered in determining where officers are going to be deployed for enforcement? And does that data ever get used to justify or inform whether more officers in general are needed either in the township or in the county of Upham?
So great question. The first part of your answer is, yes, when we get that data and identifies as enhanced enforcement, when we do get areas around the county. So what we do, I should probably explain how we handle that. So, we have a traffic management unit in this county. We're fortunate to have that. Not every detachment has a dedicated traffic unit. We assign those particular areas to a specific traffic officer. They're part of their role is to, conduct enforcement, education, whatever that may be in that area. But we go further. We also inform our entire detachment, say, okay, here's where we've identified some traffic concerns, right? So we let all of our officers know so that, even when our frontline members that are typically answering calls for service, if they have time, they are also made aware of where these problem areas are. So if they have time to do some traffic enforcement, that they know what areas if they choose, can go in and do some work in. As far as the resources, and I know it was one of the questions, maybe it was your question in the question that came the other day, but the OPP's model is that the traffic enforcement is part of the base job duties for all of our frontline members, right? So, the expectation is, so if we didn't have a traffic, for example, if we didn't have those enhancements in this county, all of our frontline members are, like I just said, like they are, all of us are responsible to do traffic enforcement, all of our uniform members, right? But without the enhancements, if obviously, 911 calls and serious collisions and all that stuff, like our officers have to respond to those things, intimate partner violence, those types of calls, and also do traffic enforcement duties. So we're very fortunate here that we have dedicated members that can, and again, I'm not saying for 1 second, like, if there's an armed robbery or some serious call that we don't have our traffic unit members assist, because of course they do, we do have those higher level responsibilities sometimes, but we're fortunate that we have those members that are dedicated. As a matter of fact, I on my way in here this morning, just to hear, I happened to see one of our traffic unit members in Pussland. So, we're fortunate that we have that, because those are their primary duties, is traffic enforcement, whereas, the general frontline member, well, yes, it's highly important part of their duties. They also have to respond to emergencies, if that makes sense. So I hope I answered your question. And we do take a look at this data, and like I said, we have a very sharp traffic sergeant, and he's really good at, capturing data and, making these sort of documents for me to be able to visualize. And we're able to, we've been sending that out to everyone to say, okay, like, here's the areas around the county, including Pussland, that we see needing some extra attention, and we tell that. So when you talk about deploying resources, that's how we do it. We look at the analytics that we have available and say, okay, and again, like, I'm not suggesting like traffic enforcement is important on every road, of course it is, right? But when we know for sure that there's a problem on, say, concession 1, right? We're telling our officers and our traffic, okay, we know for sure there's an issue going on, so let's spend some time there, as opposed to maybe somewhere else where it shows that there wasn't, or if that, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thanks. My last question is more to help us a little bit, and it in regards to the column talking about the 85th percentile, and you did speak to that. Is that a sort of piece of information that we should be looking at, that the municipality should be looking at when we're setting speed limits? And I guess follow up to that, it's what is the concern, or is there a concern, I guess, if the speed limit posted is set too too much too low or too high to what that 85th percentile is suggesting?
So thank you for that question. I'll start by saying, so the 85th percentile, that works for any speed limit, right? So if the speed limit is 50, you know, the 85th percentile is gonna show how many, you know, how many. Our target is 15 over, right? So no matter what that speed limit is, if it's 50, 60, 70, 80, some cases 40. You know, if this, I'm gonna use 80 because a lot of roads are 80 kilometers an hour here. So if the 85th percentile is 95 or higher, then we're like, okay, but we need to spend some more money there. So it doesn't matter on what the speed limit is for the 85th percentile, because it adjusts based on what that speed limit is. As far as what the speed limit is that we're set at, you know, obviously that is under the purview of the municipality or the county or the province, depending on what road jurisdiction. So, you know, we will enforce the speed limit, whatever it's like, whatever that decision is made, if it's 40, 50, 60, 70, and like, I think there's even some roads that are 30 now in the county. We will enforce speed enforcement, no matter what the speed limit is.
I guess maybe more what I'm asking is if we have a road that the 85th percentile is, that they're driving 80 or more on that road, and we have the speed limit set at 60. Is that inappropriate? Like,
Steve, let maybe myself or staff interject. A good example of that is Lake Road. It was 50 from Town Line Road all the way through.
right,
The design of the road through review indicated that the proper speed limit was higher than what was posted. So at the lower posted speed limit, you're getting 85% of the people driving more than 15 kilometers over the speed limit, but we have a road designed for higher speed. So the school of thought was, put the appropriate speed limit on there. Then when you do this Black Cat data, they won't be doing 15 kilometers an hour or more above the posted speed limit, because the speed limit's applicable or appropriate for the design of the road. So that's where you're trying to get some understanding. So if you have a long, straight, wide open county road, County Road 7, and you were to post that thing at 60 kilometers an hour from one end to the other, you're gonna have a lot of people in the 85th percentile above 60 or 75K. So it's very much dependent on the design of the road and what you feel comfortable driving it. And then it comes in, and Don, I'll ask you later, but if there's, is it TAC guidelines?
Oh, yeah, so Mr. Chair, yeah, it's the Transportation Association of Canada and TAC posted speed limit guidelines and what the county uses to determine posted speed limits.
Some too many acronyms in my deal, but I hope that helps.
yeah, no, yeah.
And I was just gonna, I was, before you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, I was gonna say that, like, the questions about what the speed limit should be, like, we have someone here that may be able to help with those answers. You know, I will say that we're happy to share our data with the county or with the municipality so that you can make those decisions, but ultimately they're not the police's decisions to make on what the speed limit should
Yeah,
be. We can
no, I'm not
certainly-
sorry, I wasn't trying to.
No, I'm just trying to explain, like,
Yeah.
we are happy to share our
Yeah.
data, like, share our collision data, share our traffic complaint data. So that, you know, people can make those decisions.
I have no other questions.
Thanks, Councilor Phillips.
Yes, some of it's been answered in your responses to Councilor Gordon, but Hunterdon County's a big area to cover off. And what criteria do you use to determine how much level of traffic enforcement you provide for municipalities? Is it based on the roads, based on the number of accidents, is it based on speed limits, that sort of thing?
Thank you for your question, sir. So basically, again, like, we try to use the metrics, right? So, you know, I think the question was posed in writing about kilometers of roadway. That's not something that we take into consideration. We look at collision data, we look at traffic complaint data, and we look at our Black Cat data. That really, I mean, those are the three main things that determines where we focus. But again, all that to be said, you know, our officers are out in all the communities all the time, right? So, and again, as I mentioned earlier, everyone's duty is to do some traffic enforcement when they're able to. So, but as far as directed for our traffic management unit, we take that data and say, okay, look, here's an area where the data available is showing that we might need to make some extra attention. So that's how we deploy our resources. I mean, if a road has thousands and thousands of cars go by, but never has a collision. Or there's a road that, hey, there's a lot of collisions and people are getting hurt on, even though there's a way lower volume of traffic, we're probably gonna direct those resources to where we may have an impact on road user safety, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Okay, next question. Obviously, every municipality is getting traffic complaints and, ours is no exception. And if we wanted to get additional traffic enforcement put on and we're willing to pay for it, what, is there a process to do so?
There is, however, right now, the OPP is only entertaining civilian enhancements. There's a moratorium on uniform enhancements currently. I don't know how long that's gonna be for, but yes, there is a process. The county's well versed in that process, on how to have that happen, but right now, that's not an option. And I'm not sure for how long.
Has it been an option in the past?
Well, I have a question.
Okay, if I can answer. that.
Sure, absolutely.
So basically, currently, we have 7 enforcement officers just for traffic as part of the countywide enhancement. The total count, I believe, is 22 enhanced officers, uniformed officers.
I believe, yeah.
Right, so, in a broader scope, we've hired 7 extra officers just for traffic in Wellington County, but that's not billable back to Bushland for one, and Mapleton for one, and Minto for one. Those resources are shared across the county. If an individual municipality actually wanted to say, we want one dedicated officer here, that's something the Police Services Board would have to look at to do that. And in current regulations, we'd have to do it within our existing complement of 7, because as Inspector Thomas has said, the OPP is, first of all, they're changing the Police Services Act, we believe in April, but that date hasn't been firmed up yet. Okay, and they've also put a moratorium on uniform enhancements because they're looking at the whole service delivery module. So right now, the county pays basically in 3 streams. One is per resident. Okay, so that's a flat number. Then there's calls for service, that's variable based on the individual calls within the county. And then the third billing line item is the enhancements. Okay, and the enhancements, we get a reconciliation on that says, okay, you had, and I'm pulling the numbers out of thin air here, so please don't quote me. You had 22 uniform operative enhancements. And I think this year the rebate was almost 6,000 hours if memory serves. So if we didn't get those enhancements that we paid for, the billing gets corrected. So, and that's due to absenteeism, paternity leaves, and or as Inspector Thomas said, calls for service. So if we've got a dedicated traffic officer, but he gets called to something else, literally every time these guys switch gears, they change code, it all goes into their data system. So it gets reconciled. So if we had an officer that was supposed to be doing the number changed against 1,400 some odd hours a year, which takes into vacation, right? So we're supposed to be getting 14 hours of traffic service from Officer A, and he's diverted for 200 hours for whatever other type of call. That gets credited back off the system. So on our annual billing, we get an annual reconciliation that kicks in for the following year. So this year it's just shy of $680,000 was a reconciliation. So what the county had already paid for services, we got that much credited back for services that essentially weren't delivered. So hope that answers the question.
Absolutely, that's it.
Mr. Mayor, may I
Yes, sir.
ask a question? Councilor Sepulveda, are you asking if it's possible for Puss Lynch to pay extra to have a dedicated traffic enforcement officer or officers just for Puss Lynch?
Yes. Okay, next question is, what requirements must be met to establish ticket generating enforcement tools such as photo radar or red light cameras on township roads?
So, to you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, so I was asked to answer that question in respect to automated speed enforcement, so. Automated speed enforcement, so currently in Ontario, the only locations that any municipality can put them in place is on community safety zones and school zones. So that's the only locations.
Okay, next, question is related to the November's, response letter, November 2nd. I had a question on enhanced enforcement, but you answered it quite well with, your response to Council Gorda, and I think having a policy for transparency purposes would be really great. So I look forward to seeing that. In the tables, Maltby Road shows a value of 75 percentile, but enhancement enforcement is now recommended. But then you go ahead and say, there's some other roads have a greater than 65 percentile, and enhancement enforcement is recommended. So I'm trying to understand the logic between the two.
Yes, thank you for your question. As I mentioned earlier, it depends. So for Maltby Road, the speed limit was 60 kilometers an hour. Of those other ones that said greater than 65, they were 50 kilometer hours was the speed limit. So Maltby Road in that chart it's a speed limit 60, the 85th percentile was 75, whereas some of those 50 kilometer an hour zones were more than 65, so more than the 15 over, where Maltby was basically at the 15 over.
All right, got you.
Okay.
Okay.
That 15 kilometers an hour is key to all.
Yeah,
of them.
exactly. Okay, I know.
That's the trigger point.
But if I might, Mayor, to refresh what Inspector Thomas just said, it's not just the speed, they also look at the collision history and the life history. So you may see in the future something that came in at 15 kilometers and is tagged as enhanced enforcement. So the 15 is certainly a large part of that equation, but it's not the only part of the equation.
Okay, next question relates to the Police Services Board responses to questions on November 2nd. And the question I have is, the hours spent on traffic-related duties is more or less constant since 2015, but the ticketing seems to have gone down significantly. Where have the hours gone? You had all these officers doing ticketing before, we have less ticketing now, so where are these officers being deployed? What sort of tasks would they be doing?
So it's, as you mentioned, like the time spent in traffic related duties is fairly consistent.
Yeah.
You know, ticketing is only one piece of the traffic strategy, right? Public education is important, ride programs are important, all of those other things. So, I mean, yes, the tickets have gone down over a 10-year period. But that's not to say that this, you know, the tickets are not the only measure of a successful traffic strategy. If you look at, you know, total collisions or total collisions have in the one chart in that document you mentioned, like they're, you know, they have gone down a bit, and we look at other metrics as well. Yes, tickets are part of that. It's not the only part of the traffic strategy. You know, you know, our officers have discretion to give warnings. Public education is important. We just launched our festive ride program last week. We're out there doing ride, you know, nearly every day, all year, to be honest, but specifically this time of year. So those hours are still spent in traffic related duties, even though they may not necessarily be issuing tickets.
All right, and I have another question, but I think you answered it when you answered Councilor Goyer's question, so I'm good then. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Bailey?
Thank you. Thanks for being here today. Just trying to go through my questions. I don't want to duplicate anything that's already been asked. I'm just gonna kind of divert a little bit away from the nitty gritty. I noticed and I think it was the same report where it just mentioned traffic complaints in Puslinch, 2023. I don't notice any drinking and driving in the chart. Is it kind of lumped into erratic driving, or is it, yeah?
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Yes, exactly. So a lot of traffic complaints come in as, I mean, because you don't know if the person's drinking and driving until you actually stop the vehicle and have an interaction with the driver, right? You know, so, you know, traffic complaints, sometimes they come in after the fact, but yes, to your point, where you see erratic driving, some of that will be and the calls for service, a lot of the times are, hey, I'm behind someone and they're leaving, or they cross center or that type of thing. Because you can't definitively say that the person's impaired until we actually have an interaction with that person, right? So they do get captured in some of those other categories. As far as like erratic driving is, you know, probably the most common one where people are saying, you know, the person's weaving or across the center or hit the shoulder, that type of thing.
Right, so you talked about the RIDE program. Are there any other kind of public safety engagements or educational pieces around the drinking and driving to try to bring that data down?
I mean, we're doing our ride programs all year long, right? You know, I've done public messaging myself throughout the year, and I always stress about, you know, don't drink and drive. It's not just drinking and driving anymore either, it's drug impairment as well, so, we usually phrase it as drug or alcohol impaired driving. So we try to get that public education piece out there. You know, and yeah, a major part of that is our ride programs, that we do all throughout the year. In fact, I think I had a number in one of these documents about, you know, in West Regional, well, now this is probably a month old now, but in West Regional OPP, we've done 7,100 ride programs across the region this year, compared to 3,500 last year. So, we're out there, you know, all the time trying to get impaired drivers off the road.
Yeah. Well, doing our Quistledge cleanup day along our county road, I said there's cans and bottles up like crazy. So we know it's out there, you know, happening.
Yeah, and just to add, sorry to interrupt, but you know, we encourage, we want people to call the police if they suspect an impaired driver. It is an emergency because, you know, the potential for something catastrophic happens. So, you know, if there's you know, if people are listening or your network of people, like we strongly encourage people to phone 911 if they suspect they see an impaired driver, because we want to be able to interdict that and get them off the road.
And it's also important if they can get the license plate number. That helps tremendously, because then they can follow up.
It helps, certainly, but you know, we always balance that with, you know, we don't want members of the public put themselves at risk, obviously, right? But, you know, certainly we encourage people to call the police to report suspected impaired driving. We want those people off our roads.
That was my follow-up question was who do you call? Like, do you actually call 911
Yeah.
to report that? Okay.
I mean, if it's an after the fact thing, like you saw something like home, not a, you know, again, but if in the moment, if you suspect it could be, it's an emergency, right? It is an emergency because of the potential for something catastrophic to happen.
I'm just kind of putting on my safe communities hat here. We had a discussion about, there was, Teen Driver Safety Week happened in the Wellington County high schools. But in this, it was sort of discovered that all of the kids from Quistland, who are Wellington County residents, attend Guelph high schools. But Guelph police, and they don't have a safe, I don't know if they have a safe communities committee or not, but anyway, they weren't participating in the Teen Driver Safety Week. So I'm just wondering how Wellington OPP can be helping target our Wellington residents in Guelph schools, you know, to help with some of this, you know, driver education and things like that. So I don't know if you want to speak to how OPP's in the schools and.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, thinking off the top of my mind, you know, we may have to reimagine how, like, so we have some community response unit members, and we also have community safety officers, and a youth resiliency officer in the county, right? So we may have to reimagine if we're not reaching a certain demographic of students, in a particular area, i.e., you know, if the students here are going to Guelph to high school, like we may have to reimagine how we might be able to engage that particular demographic, whether it's something at the community center in Quistland or some other way, to engage those youth. That's a great point.
Because there were times where. So are the OPP in the high school, in the Wellington County high school?
We are not.
No, not now.
You know, that was not our decision. However, there's 4 high schools in the county, Erin, Mount Forest, Palmerston, and Center Wellington. We used to have one officer in each of those schools. That was their full-time job. That got reinvented, I guess, if you want to call it that. We're no longer in those schools, but you know, we do, you know, if the school calls if there's an emergency, like we still respond to school, we still have a good relationship with the school board. You know, we have had to reimagine how we interact with youth. We have a youth advisory council now and those types of things. You know, our youth officer connects in with the Glow Hubs and those types of things. So we've kind of had to really how we interact with youth. And this would be another example of how we may have to think of other ways to get traffic safety messaging to the high school age students in Portsmouth, for example.
Okay, say that.
I want to get notes on some of this.
Just skip ahead here. So this is more, we're talking about the 15 km/h threshold. When we're looking at the 85th percentile. First of all, where does that 15 come from? Is that sort of a provincial thing that's been shared down, or is it something just locally we've adopted? Why the 15 km/h over sort of threshold?
I'll say two things. You know, that's where the program started with the previous commander. However, secondly to that, 15 over is where demerit points start on driver's licenses as well. So that's kind of one of those areas that it's kind of that threshold, I guess. Not to say that you know, you can't ever re-examine that type of thing, but you know, 15 over is kind of where that, you know, more sanctions kick in, I guess, if you want to call it that. So and again, notwithstanding, it's different for school zones and things like that, but generally speaking, you know, I mean, speeding is 1 kilometer over theoretically, right? But 15 is kind of where that threshold is as far as when demerit points and other things start to kick in.
Okay, so looking at some of the data, there seemed to be well, I was drawing, I guess, my own correlation between the number of tickets issued is declining in the data. Is that due to the fact we're just increasing speed limits and then folks aren't getting ticketed? In my head, it's kind of like saying, well, your assignment's due on Wednesday. They hand it in Thursday and they say, well, actually, there is no due date, so don't worry about it, it's not late. So if we keep changing, you know, the threshold for the expectation, then I don't know, it's kind of like we're not holding people accountable to what the rule is. So to me, if the rule and the speed limit is this, but we're gonna give them, you know, an extra 15 kilometers. Yeah, anyway, I'm struggling with how the residents say, okay, well, we want it to stay at 60. Oh, well, the data says 85, you know, more than 85% of people are driving faster than that. So let's just change the speed limit to be faster and then everyone will be more compliant. What's my response to residents to that?
So, you know, I'll jump in there briefly. So specific to the Lake Road area.
That's one example.
Yeah, it's one example.
Yeah.
And I'm in a similar frame of mind that I have trouble buying into that. If people are not complying to the speed limit, let's raise the speed limit to make them within the 85th percentile. However, we did have a report that stated if we raise the speed limit on this section of road, it should make people more compliant to drive 50 in this more dense area. Well, without putting that into place, we wouldn't know if it actually works. And that's where your report is going to. So typically raising the speed limit goes in conjunction with the TAC guidelines saying this road has been designed to this type of construction that, you know, people feel, not a technical term, but comfortable driving at this speed. And the situation with Lake Road is where, okay, we've been making them drive too slow, then they drive faster in the, I hate to classify this more critical area to be more cognizant of your speed, but that's the intention of the raising, to make it appropriate to the design of the road. And to be truthful, to take the political interference out of speed limit changes. I feel there's a few historic examples in the county generally, where the speed limit goes 50, 60, 40, 30, 30, and it's all over the map. And we're trying to get away from that. And we're trying to put the speed limits on that are appropriate for the design, backed up by TAG, maybe some other data. But that brings into question, the whole, policy, I don't know if it's policy yet, but do we support raising speed limits to make people compliant? I think it would have to be determined on each specific road section and lots of reports. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah. Just related to, you know.
Sorry to interrupt, Inspector. I don't know if that helps. Explain, do you have anything to that, or Don, anybody?
One at a time.
Well, I don't know who wants to
I
answer.
think road design, yeah, road design.
There's so, you, Mr. Mayor, what you spoke of, like, for specifically Lake Road, that was in our roadmaster action plan. We looked at 27 different road segments throughout the county that were seen as hotspots. Lake Road was definitely one that had been noted for a while. So the consultant did the review of that road. I noted definitely there's a difference between the residential side and then the rural section. Looking at that TAC guideline, that's what they used for determining the posted speed limit. The actual in the residential area, it did note that a 60-kilometer speed limit would be appropriate. So that was noted that it was only a 10-kilometer increase, and that was noted in several locations throughout the county, but the decision and the recommendation from staff was not to raise speed limits just based on that 10-kilometer differential. To maintain that historical speed limit. So in cases where Lake Road, and there was one other case in the county, where there was actually 20-kilometer difference. That was the appropriate speed limit to make change. Just on a basic safety issue. It's when we have a low speed limit of 50, and the road environment has driver behavior showing people to go 80, 90, that speed differential is a safety factor that a consultant noted. The fact that you know, you have compliant drivers and you have people that are going to drive what they feel comfortable. So raising the speed limit, it's Lake Road is one location, and there was driver frustration that seemed to come out in some of the comments that you had people passing in the residential area because they were probably driving so slowly in the rural section that that causes a safety issue. So yeah, raising speed limits is not something that we're doing. It's only when the TAC guidelines supports it, plus the accident data and also the speed monitoring that we do as well.
Thank you for that answer, yeah, because you can see how the collision data could then go up if you're not, you know, working with what's sort of appropriate for the road. Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify about, you know, we talk about the 15 over a lot, that, you know, officers have the discretion to raise speeding offenses below that as well, right? So I just want to be clear, it's not that we give people free passes, that's not the message here. You know, speeding is speeding is speeding. You know, there could be circumstances, was there a child crossing the road, was it a car, like there's lots of different factors that can come into play here, so I don't want everyone to get you know, think that if someone's not doing 15 over, we're not gonna take any action. That's not the case. That you know, it's dependent on the circuit. Speeding is speeding, right? So
I just have one other question. It's more, not even a question for staff, but I understand there's a youth advisory committee through the police. Is this something we could connect our youth advisory committee with, maybe to come and do a presentation or do something? Yeah, just like an outreach.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can certainly connect with the OPP to see if there's possibilities in the next year for that presentation.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Hurst?
Thank you. This is concerning and troubling that concession 4 isn't the only one with beer cans. What's happened to the side of it, but I think my council colleagues have answered a lot of my questions. If you can bear with me, I might jump around a few things, just points of clarity here. So I guess the first one for Mr. Kudo. Is there any plans or intentions to put in any red light cameras or speed enforcement in the automated nature within the county in the foreseeable future? Has there been any direction provided? I'm just curious, because this is certainly a new topic out there that gets lots of attention. I'm just curious what the county's intentions are.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the roads committees provided direction to proceed with automated speed enforcement. Actually, this week, we are releasing a request for proposal to get vendors to reply to that proposal. The proposal would be for automated speed enforcement to take county roads as a one-year trial, and then see how we would see how it could be applied to the local local towns and townships. So presentations from two vendors at the County Roads Committee. We put out actually a request for information document this past summer, and a couple vendors replied to that. So we're moving forward. There's a lot of research and involvement to try to set up an automated speed enforcement program.
Thanks. Are any of those county roads happen to be within our township jurisdiction, or are they all north of Guelph?
Mr. Chair, so automated speed enforcement can only be applied to community safety zones and school zones. So you have a school zone on Rock Road, and then a community safety zone that the county set up on County Road 46 through Aberfoyle.
I look forward to hearing more about that. So I appreciate that.
Sure. I can answer you, so depending on the success of that county program, it would then likely behoove Bushlands Council or Mapleton Council or Mitchell Council to review what they have for community safety zones. So, I mean, we all have our local municipalities that we're more familiar with. The county looks at water strokes and is dealing with county roads. So, and just to pick on Lake Road, because it's a conversation for today. If Bushlands Council decided that Lake Road should become a community safety zone, then there's a process for you guys to go through to do that. And then once this, there's no way you can do it in terms of the pilot, but once that 1 year pilot is done and gets extended on, then you could likely piggyback on the county system. So, I mean, right now, I believe it's 7 or 9.
Mr. Chair, we have 9 community safety
So
zones.
now we have 9 in the county. So if this type of program actually works the way Roads Committee hopes it's gonna work, there may be a plethora of local municipalities saying, okay, if we're gonna continue to do this, we'd like to create a couple. We might have 18 or 27 community safety zones 5 years from now, so.
That would take a loosening of the requirements around a community safety zone. It's currently, you have to have a school zone. They're both the same thing.
No, Mr. Chair, you did school zones or community safety zones. So community safety zones, the county, the road master actually has criteria to set up a community safety zone. Local towns and townships can have their own criteria to determine community safety zones on your particular roads.
Because we had a presentation by LAS and they mentioned that we could designate our own community safety zones. My understanding was they had to be within a certain proximity to a school or a hospital or there's 2 or 3 criteria.
High pedestrian traffic.
High pedestrian traffic, community center. Anyways, I'm just concerned that a blanket statement that we as a municipal council could go through a process and make essentially any road a community safety zone. I need more information on that because I'm not sure that's the case. Because we're gonna have a lot of people.
I wasn't suggesting you do it anywhere. I was just bringing out Lake Road for a fun conversation.
Even the previous presenter, I don't know, a couple of meetings ago, generally gave that, that opinion, and we asked staff to go back because that's not my understanding. I could be wrong, but I just want to make sure the public
Certainly gonna be.
is hearing that, it doesn't mean we can make, I don't know, concession 1 a community safety zone. Might require legislative changes on the provinces and before we're permitted to do that.
So through Mr. Chair, staff are bringing a report to the December meeting, just with the information from the reporting back direction. So there'll be some clarity for council at that
Excellent.
time.
Thank you. Sorry, Councilor Chris.
It's good discussion. So thank you both of you. A couple other pieces here. There was reference to civilian enhancement enforcement, as opposed to, I guess, forgive my layman terms here, uniformed officer. Can one of you share what that looks like? I'm just not familiar with what that, and I'm curious if you can explain what that entails.
So, just if I understand the question, we can still have civilian enhancements, but the civilian enhancements can't do uniformed officer work. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I think to piggyback on Councilor Wilson's question, the desire to have more enforcement in the region as a pay-as-you-go type of enhancement. And then I guess what I heard was, or what I thought I heard was, you can do that via a officer in uniform, but the challenge is those numbers are set and there's, you know, the ability to expand that. So then the relief mechanism would be the enhanced option. And I'm just curious what that looks like.
So if I could, I'll take that one. So basically, the civilian positions right now are a couple of men's staff in 2 different offices. We have 3 physical buildings. The latest addition to those non-uniform enhancements was traffic collision. So anything we can do. So there's a traffic collision reporting center at Avoyne now that had 1 staff and is now adding. Is adding 2 more additional staff to that. Okay, now what that does is with a collision reporting center, that we take a police officer in uniform off the street dealing with a minor traffic incident and direct that individual to the collision center, which frees them up to do other things. The other thing that's in the works right now that has not been approved by West Region is we have 2 community communications officers. One of those has moved on to another role within Wellington County, so fortunately we didn't lose him because he's a good officer. But there's a proposal being put before the board right now and being vetted by West Region to change that from a uniformed officer to a civilian individual. Again, that meets that criteria of not having a uniform, not wearing a badge and a gun. And if we're successful with that, then that's going to put another uniform on the streets of Wellington County. So it's kind of an end run around the current policy, but it's an opportunity to start rejigging where Inspector Thomas deploys resources. So those civilian ones are non-uniform. They're usually parked in an office. They're not frontline people.
Thank you for that clarity. So I think that's my take is you're reallocating resources based on the ability of a uniformed officer to focus on certain things that are less administrative. Yeah, thank you. Just a couple wrap up things here. I think actually, and I was quite looking forward to your delegation today, in the sense of just hearing more about what the service board does and the role that you play within the community. And I think one of the challenges we have, and I don't want to make this a dialogue around value for money, because I'm not sure those are entirely productive conversations. But I think from my perspective, I think I see great opportunity to better communicate the activities that are taking place so that the community has a better understanding. And I think, this my councillor colleagues and mayor are probably a good proxy, because we have the window into what goes on per se through through the municipal channels. But I think, I kind of look at what a communication strategy looks like for this community. And I think it's really important. I think I saw some really interesting statistics. I'd like to hear more about those. I'd like to hear, statistics in terms of data, where we're at, enforcement activities and progress thereafter type of things. So we're moving the needle from A to B. And I think that's really important. And I think collectively we have a fantastic opportunity to tell that story. And I think it's something that I think would be quite welcomed at the community level. So I think I'll leave it at that. I guess the one last thing, and I'd probably say the most amount of complaints that I get from my perspective is vehicles not abiding by school bus, lighting requirements, i.e. blowing right through a flashing red light. I can say, I have two young kids between my wife and I. We're doing the bus duty or morning and night, and I can tell you, like, probably more than a dozen times between September and now, I've seen cars, and I live in concession forward, so very rural road. Fly right by, and I guess I don't want to make this a sample size of myself per se, but I think that's one thing that I would encourage if there is an opportunity to put some time and effort and collaborate with the school bus companies on the school bus enforcement. I think that's a really, it's a key touch point within this community for certain. So I'll leave it at that. Unless you have a comment.
I just have a comment really, we have the ability, and again, it goes back to, some about getting a license plate. We can lay charges after the fact against the owner of the vehicle for that type of a violation. So if I go back to like encouraging people to call us, if that information is available, because that's one of the offenses in the Highway Traffic Act where you don't necessarily have to identify the driver. The owner of the vehicle can be held accountable for passing the school bus when the arm is out, or the stop arm, or however it's worded in the HTA. But so that's just one, I just want to put that out there. If I'll use yourself for an example, if you catch a license plate, like, let us know, because there's a mechanism to do that in the Highway Traffic Act for that particular offense.
That's great guidance and advice. I can certainly hope we communicate that to the community. I'll leave it at one. And I did see some social media on the truck enforcement. We need more of that. And I'm not sure if 35% infraction rate is a good number or a bad number, but the fact that 35 were flagged for not being in compliance, to me, and how that was communicated within the community is fantastic. We need more of that. So thank you, your colleagues.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Hurst. I was gonna ask the same question with 36%. I wasn't sure, with other blitzes, if you kind of had a measure. I mean, I know the same as speeding, you want 0 infractions. I get that, but industry wide, are you seeing a number that's generally the infraction percentage?
I mean, I don't have that number in front of me, but based on some other blitzes, like those. You're right, like one commercial motor vehicle that's not safe for the roadway is one too many, right? So, we will continue our commercial motor vehicle enforcement efforts around the county. And, like I said, we're really fortunate to have, and again, aside from just blitzes, like our two inspectors, they stop vehicles as part of the normal, course of their day, right? So, they are out there monitoring commercial vehicles all the time, right? These targeted enforcement initiatives, they're great too, because like I said, it pulls in people. As far as like if the 30% is a standard, like I don't have the
I don't
numbers
want to say standard, but
in front of me. Like I know when we do these targeted enforcement initiatives, like we are taking vehicles out of service, which is always troubling because one unsafe vehicle, there comes many, right? So we will continue our efforts around commercial motor vehicle enforcement in Puslinch and around the rest of the county. And our officers are very passionate about that work that they do, and we're fortunate to have them here.
If I could here, Sheila, just to add to that, the key word in that whole conversation is targeting. So when you're focusing on that 32.5% failure rate, the OPP does not have the resources to stop every truck on the road that day. So the target is a key part of that. So they're looking at the vehicles that are passing and selecting specific vehicles to pull in for inspection. So it's a bit of a misnomer to say, well, we did 40 vehicles and 32% failed. They may have in fact looked at 250 vehicles and selected 40 to be targeted for review. So it is a selective process. So if you're talking to that of the public, say, yeah, that's a high number, but they were very specific on what vehicles they pulled in for inspection, right? Because it's when you do a blitz, it's not they're capturing every commercial vehicle that day. They're having a look at everyone, depending on which officers are back to the inspection station, but they're not selecting everyone.
Well, it's obvious if they're missing a piece or a tire or this or that, they're gonna go, that guy is getting inspected. You know, if it's from the first observation. it was,
If it's
you
a
know,
brand new
there's some
freight line
discretion.
that's gleaming clean, it's likely gonna pass right on through and nobody's gonna see it. So
Um,
it's-
as part of the, Maureen, you may not be able to answer this today, but I'd like you to follow up with staff. At a later point. What are the requirements for a local vehicle, commercial vehicle to provide documentation of their gross weight? So what I'm asking is, if a truck is hauling something down the road, do they need to, on demand, provide a ticket, like a weigh scale? To show that they are in compliance with the HTA or are weights of trucks and under the HTA or wherever they're under. Because you know, I'd hate to pick on, say, a local landscaper, but if they're loading a dump truck, I still believe they have a responsibility to ensure that that vehicle is legal for the road. Just because you're loading it yourself, as soon as you enter the highway, I'd like to know if they're responsible to have documentation to prove that they're legal. So if you can't answer that today, I'd just like to be able to follow up with staff with that, that'd be great.
Oh, I'll find out about the documentation, sir. I will say, like, you're right, as soon as that vehicle enters the roadway, it needs to be in compliance with the weight laws, which are under the Highway Traffic Act, so. You know, again, like, there's mechanisms to lead charges against drivers and, or the operators, that type of thing. As far as what they have to provide, I'll have to check on that, like, you know, from my old MTO days, like, we'd ask for a bill of lading, but, you know, that doesn't necessarily always have weights on it. But I mean, they are responsible to make sure they're in compliance with the weight and dimension laws for sure.
Spoke about the enhancement. I heard 7 officers, but then, I heard 22. Is it a total of 22 enhanced officers or is it 7 currently? Just need some clarification.
It's through you, sir. It's 7 for traffic specifically.
Okay.
In total, it's the other number.
Okay, in going with that and seeing the graphs of the declining tickets and, I'm not necessarily an advocate for more tickets. You and I have had this conversation. I mean, I'm quite happy with enforcement with warnings. Has there been any discussion around decoy police cars? So, I'm sure you have vehicles in reserve for when ones break down. Has there any been discussion around a program where a couple of officers show up for work, through your data collection and say, you know, we'll just keep using Coast because you're here. Session 1 is problematic. They drive a police car out. They maybe have permission from some landowner to park the cruiser in their driveway. They leave it for the prescribed time when that's the problem, and they come and pick it up. We've actually had those conversations with my director of public works, you know, just brainstorming, but let's go buy a surplus or a used police car, you know, put it on the fleet and drive it around the township and park it, because I feel everybody would agree that when you perceive a police car sitting on the side of the road, just slow down. Even if you're not even speeding, which could be problematic. But, so anyways, that's the question. Have you thought of any other methods of policing besides, I know the OPP is not leading the charge on the electronic speed enforcement, but other programs to try to help?
It's a great question, like, you know, we haven't considered putting an empty car somewhere only because normally our cars are, like, our officers are in them.
I guess they get vandalized too. If they were left
You know,
alone.
so that's not something we consider, but again, like, you know, globally, to your point, you know, and this is a me thing, like, I call it the pillars, right? Like, there's enforcement, education, road design, speed limit, and traffic calming measures, like, all of those things have to work in conjunction with each other to have a successful traffic program, right? So it's not one specific thing in my mind anyways, and this is just me speaking. All of those things have to work in conjunction, and you've heard a lot of talk about that today, about how all those pieces fit. You know, anecdotally, like, you know, it was, and again, I'm not by any means directing, but when I see those, you know, signs on the side of the road that flash your speed, right? I slow down, even though I know that's not connected to any kind of photo radar, but there are effective tools out there. You know, I mean, yes, the police, we have part, you know, we have a large part of this for sure, but there are other things that can be considered. You know, to make, I call them the 5 pillars. That's just the Steve thing. Those 5 pillars have to work together, you know, to have a successful traffic program. Or to reduce collisions or fatalities or whatever that may be. So, that's just things to consider. Those things seem to be effective. We have 2 portable radar signs that we deploy around the county as well. Like, again, like we, it's the ones that you pull up with a trailer and you park them, and it's like we use those too. Like we find those are effective as well. So, it's those types of strategies we try to do.
Just wanted to plant that seed with you. The refund, there's a better term for it, 600K that came back due to, you know, the traffic officers being redeployed. I guess this would be a question for Ken that I can get an answer for later. That 600K, does that offset levy in each year that we get the refund? Because if it does, that could be problematic for my next statement.
Well, Mr. Mayor, the county surplus would be contributed to by the rebate reimbursement.
So my understanding is right, then we use that surplus to fund reserves and it doesn't affect the levy, which is good for where I'm going next. My opinion is,
Just, can I go a little further with that?
sure,
That surplus, if you will, that isn't dedicated to the police budget for its use next year. It's
No.
part of the county surplus.
Yes.
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay.
So,
One more, Mayor Shield, before you move on. Because it's an annual process with the OPP, it's already in the OPP budget, an annual reconciliation of 450.
okay, so.
So that variance this year was significantly higher than it has been historically. But there's already 450 built into the budget because we know every year we're gonna get money back because basically the province is, you know, better to ask for forgiveness than more payment. So they bill you fully up front, and then when they
Okay.
do the reconciliation, there's always an annual rebate. So within our budget process,
There's 450.
it's 450. So
Okay.
the difference between the 680 and the 450.
Well, either way, the way I view this is that, there's been a higher priority call that has drawn these officers off, which is completely appropriate. But me personally, as the, you know, the mayor of this community here in the speeding complaints, I don't want to check back. I want you to utilize that money to get those officers back in the field. Now, is it problematic that if we have a $680,000 surplus from time that we paid for already, then we have to pay for overtime for those officers to meet those original contract expectations? That could be viewed, did I confuse everybody? I don't want to pay time and a half for something I just paid time for, one time for. So there, you know, if we're paying the rate to have enforcement, but because of unforeseen circumstances in the province, those people get redirected, then we get reimbursed. But then I say, no, I want you to get more hours of policing. And you're like, well, that's overtime, cost you 1.5 times to have them back in the field. I don't want the money, I want policing, right? Is what it boils down to. So as you know, part of the enhancement contract renewal, which I believe is in 25, and I have a question around it. I'm gonna start asking questions around other methods of getting that supplemental money utilized versus just a surplus contribution, because with the Black Cat data, especially in the southern part of the county, we're seeing arguably a speeding review. So to me, I'd rather see boots on the ground than money in the bank. But then there's budget impacts and I have to see a whole bunch more. So I'll leave that with you. I don't need any comments, but it's just something that's been going on in my mind. The other one is the contract renewal, the enhancement renewal. What's the process for that renewal? And this will be done at the county level. I recognize that, but is there any performance measures weighted against the previous contract? Is it just, it's CPI is added to it? So just a little more information on how that contract is renewed and the process around that. It can be pretty high level.
Mr. Mayor, contract branch of the OPP will present us with their, I hesitate to call it their proposal. But we'll call it their proposal. And it's reviewed by the board, staff, and ultimately if there's any alterations to it or any local requests, they're contemplated by the OPP's branch, contract branch, and ultimately it's signed, with county council being the signatory. So if you wanted to add 10 cops or something, that has to go through an approval process of the OPP and the management board.
Hmm.
And as you've heard, there's a moratorium right now on hiring cops. So that may stand in the way of hiring more right now. But it's a negotiation isn't really the proper term either.
No, I get that.
Because
We're
it's a
told.
mandated service and we're not gonna go out and shop it around the Waterloo region or something.
No. I was more focused on the enhancement part because I was pretty certain I saw that we had a 5-year contract or agreement for the enhancement component. And that comes up for renewal in 2025. So I'm looking at it as two different components. You have the base OPP, which is, you know, the province has a formula and here's the bill essentially. But the enhancement component was on a 5-year rolling. Is there any review of that 5-year enhancement renewal?
I'll say yes as a default.
As a default, okay. Okay, I'll move on. Boundary roads, I've received complaints around Gore Road, and that one's a tricky one because Hamilton has part of it, I think we have part of it, North Dumfries has part of it. As far as municipal maintenance concerns, right? And the speeding, so I'm just curious, I get that. Well, I'm making another assumption, the OPP has jurisdiction across the province, because I see occasionally an OPP officer pulling over a car in Guelph. So if we have residents that bring speeding complaints about these boundary roads that we may, so the Gore, Hamilton has, and North Dumfries have portions that they have sole responsibilities for. I guess, also, I don't, anyways, who do we call for?
I would suggest like, you don't necessarily have to know, because like if you're a person that's not from the area passing down Gore Road and you have to call the police, just call, right? Our, like the dispatch centers, and they sort that out as to where it's gonna, who's gonna get dispatched to that particular call for service. If it's an ongoing like this complaint, you know, I mean, we do a lot of the border roads, you know, just let us know, and if that happens to have to be a conversation between us and like our neighboring jurisdiction, that's fine. But you know, for someone that's just driving or trying to call in a traffic complaint or whatever, or there's, you know, something's happened in the middle of Gore Road, you know, just tell them to call the police, and like the communications world will sort out where that has to go to get dispatched.
That's a great answer. If we have Puslinch residents that are living on a portion of road that is municipally under the jurisdiction of, say, a neighboring municipality, they have speeding concerns, is that data that, you know, the OPP wants to receive?
We would take it.
You would take
Right,
it?
and again, it just because the road jurisdiction might be Hamilton and that residence is Puslinch, like if they call the police to their residence, we're going to that.
Okay.
Right, the communications people kind of sort out who's more where.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, I have is the Black Cats. As a big part of getting those 7 Black Cats. But it's my understanding a few of them or additional ones have been transferred to the county works department. And I'm just wondering, what's the process for the local municipality, if any, to request them from the county side of things? Because ultimately, if we have a concern, maybe the OPP ones are deployed already. So maybe you can speak to that for my colleagues here.
Well, we're deploying the Black Cats as well, so they are being utilized. We, like the OPP as well, we receive a number of speeding complaints, and we do our best to coordinate with the OPP as to who's deploying where. So we have not, we haven't had a request from the local towns and townships for black cat, use, but we do, they're needed on county roads, so I would not say that they're necessarily available. Because we do get a number of speeding complaints and they are being used.
Right, so the request, could come from our Director of Public Works, or if you want to, if you're gonna receive a request for a county black cat to be deployed, do you require the request to be from the council, or can it be staff to staff asking for those deployments?
I mean, in a lot of, being as director, a lot of situations that it's working with public works directors, directly with other roads folks, if that's.
So you're comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with that, but I can't say that they'll be available. We have a
No, I
long
get that.
list of locations to monitor out there.
Was my initial statement correct that we redistributed the part of the 7 or whatever we had to the roads department, or did we purchase new ones for the roads department?
We was very, yeah, that is true. And we also, the county continues to use our own traffic loops as well. So we have a number of different ways to monitor traffic and speeding.
No, I did say last week, but I have one more. And just the black cats, generally they've been working very well. How long have we had them now? A few years?
Yeah, both that, I'm just trying to think back, I was on an assignment over the county when it first came, so I'm gonna say probably in around the two years, yeah, 2021 maybe,
Correct.
or 2020 even.
Around there approximately, but generally your staff are finding them, they're happy to be working with them. They work well. You know, the river enhancements of the, call the program, having more of them, generally they're a welcome piece of equipment. They're not difficult.
Yeah, if you want to swear, yeah, our staff are, finding it very easy to use and to download, and it's a good combination with our other traffic monitoring devices that we have.
And Mr. Mayor, I hope the police are happy with the black cats because we bought them based on your recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you never know though. Like after a few years, they could have bugs. They didn't work well in the winter. Who knows?
Mr. Mayor, from your perspective, would it be helpful if the county bought a bunch of black cats and just lent them out to the local municipalities as requested?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. As Mr. Kudo mentioned here, it sounds like there's almost a waiting list of, sections or roads that you've had requests for deployment of those. And I feel they're a relatively inexpensive item to purchase for what the data we collect. I'd hate to put a guess out there, but that's why I asked if they're useful. I would like to see expansion of the call it the program, because we could just collect more data and be more responsive to citizen concerns and be proactive on it. All right, well, yeah, again, thank you for coming down here. I'm pretty sure that we would really appreciate Inspector Thomas coming annually for that report, as Councillor Goyda alluded. I remember it was Inspector Lawson when I was brand new, came down and COVID hit. So if we have to formally put in a request for that, November, whatever time of year that report comes out, but you're likely to see that, but appreciate it.
That report comes out in February.
Well, you said that you're gonna back it up, and then you said the new report's gonna be coming out in November, and then the lower tiers are gonna be able to ask to have the delegate.
No. So the annual report is done after year end in February.
Yeah.
The intent is to have that report published in February,
Okay.
sent to the lower tiers with a letter from the inspector saying, here's the report. If you'd like us to delegate to it, we're happy to do it. So it'll be the local council's decision as to whether or not they want a delegation.
I thought you
We're
said
gonna
it was
receive the
coming out
report.
earlier or something, but that's fine.
We were late this past year. And in part because we didn't have a February meeting, because with the new transition, we didn't have a quorum because we didn't have the provincial appointees yet. So February meeting got canceled. It just kind of got overlooked and we carried on. It was actually a reporter that called us and said, hey, what happened to the annual report? And I went, oh, good point.
Yeah.
Let's get it published.
No, we appreciate your time and coming down here today. That's great.
Just to build on that a little bit more, and also what Councilor Hurst said, just about sort of like creating more awareness and communication. Inspector Thomas writes a monthly report. That gets posted to the police board agenda. I found it to be really helpful to read those. So I don't know if perhaps from a staff level, when those reports get posted, it would be possible to extract them and put them on our own council agendas as a correspondence item or a consent item, just to sort of to continue to build on that relationship of communication between us and the police.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can connect and just find the timing of when that goes live, and then our staff can do exactly that and put it on our agendas.
Any further from members of council?
CEO Scott, with respect to your comment on additional black cats to be purchased for use by the rest of the municipality, do you want a formal motion from us or to do that?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, political initiative is always a good thing, especially at budget time versus staff initiatives. I want to be clear. We talked about, should staff just call Dawn about deploying? We only put our black cats on county roads, just along that, so everybody's aware of that. So there are none available from the county, for local deployment currently.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to suggest we make a motion to ask the county to make purchase black cats be made available for our township roads.
Was that your thinking as well, that these would be lent out to municipalities for their local roads, or just more county roads within the local municipality?
Mr. Mayor, if there's an interest in having them on local roads and the local municipalities don't have any, yet we have, say, 7 of them, we got 7 municipalities. That would satisfy my thought. We don't want to take the black cats we have deployed now for county purposes away from county purposes. So we need more. It's kind of like more traffic enforcement.
Just want to make sure your thought wasn't just county roads or the state, you know, what I mean.
Well, I understood it would be township roads, so I'd like to make that motion.
All right, and you seconder for that, Councillor Goyna. All right, discussion.
I'm fully on board.
I think it's important to show our residents we are taking a proactive approach, and certainly having a black cat so more or less dedicated to the township would be a great benefit.
Are you wanting them to consider this for the 20, what year are we in? 24 budget or? for
I guess I'll defer to our CEO Scott, if that's possible for the 24 budget, or is it too late now?
Anything's possible, Mr. Mayor.
It's a little late, but
Well, I'll rephrase it at the earliest convenience.
One comment, if I could, Mayor. So the one thing that we need to focus on if we're gonna add additional black hats is that communication flow. So for example, and it's not currently on our reports, but the county black hats that are deployed are actually reporting their results back to the OPP as well. So, I mean, it's an enforcement tool that they want to use, so. It's great if we had extras. I support the idea, don't get me wrong, but there needs to be a protocol set up that when that data is collected and shared back to the OPP, that they can get on the report, so that again, when we look at the county holistically. Just picking a number here, we buy 10, we now have 17 of these devices out there. That all of that data is getting collected to a central point. And then again, OPP resources that are being dedicated based on the data that's being shared. All right, so.
Mr. CEO, that component could be dealt with internally through.
Yeah.
Staff, yeah.
Thank you. I was thinking communication more from the township perspective, and the staff is. Do we need some sort of internal policy then as to how and where and when we would put these black cats out? If it's on a resident request basis, is it just staff deciding?
We don't have to make a decision
No,
today.
but that needs to
There's
be
a principle,
Yeah.
principle of getting more, and we can work that out
That's just
later.
part of the package.
We gotta convince them to buy them first. Councillor Hurst?
In principle, I'm very supportive of more data to make informed decisions. So whether that's via the county channels or this is something that maybe the Director of Public Works wants to do directly within the municipality, I don't have a preference. I think the direction that I would share is like, let's get on with it. I think yes. However that happens, I'll leave it to staff.
I want to hear what you have captured, please.
So through Mr. Chair, I have that Portage Council requests that the county consider purchasing black cat equipment to be made available for township roads as soon as possible, taking into account budget constraints.
Is that clear enough? Just
Very.
any further? Where are you sending that to? County's
with us.
Yeah. Typically, we've been sending it to the clerk now, so then the clerk can determine where it lands, because it's, you know, I don't want to land over here and then also, well, this shouldn't be here, it should be over there. So we just send it to the clerk and you guys figure it out. Okay, all in favor? Gary?
And then we just have a motion to receive the presentation.
All right, can I get a move for that? Thank you, Councilor Bailey, Councilor Hurst, all in favor? Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Hour and a half, almost. Or more. Oh, Lake Road. Oh, yeah, Don, Lake Road. I forgot about
You don't
that.
need a presentation, so.
I'm good. Just,
All right.
we'll briefly do Lake Road, even though we received it. Sorry, Don.
Okay.
I kind of touched on it. That's why I got distracted.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, thank you for asking me, or I was asked to come along with this, enforcement delegation here. As the inspector noted, we talked about 5, we're going to talk about 3, the 3 E's with traffic safety. That's, enforcement and engineering, which is what you'll hear about today. And then education is the other, aspect of traffic safety. And, to the education side, it's not only promoting it to the public, but we meet quarterly with the traffic management unit, our road staff do, just to go over safety, road concerns and speeding and making sure that we're coordinated with our monitoring, et cetera. So Lake Road, we'll talk about the engineering aspects that we completed construction on Lake Road this past summer.
Do you want to share?
I guess I'll just roll through the slide deck.
Yeah,
Okay.
she'll pull it up here.
So I've got the project details on one slide there that lists a number of improvements, safety improvements and speed management measures that we did include into the Lake Road reconstruction. So all following the report that I provided in February of 2023 to the Roads Committee and County Council. I know that report itself generated some questions from this council, and I provided some responses to those questions in the spring. So the Lake Road construction project, really some of the background on it was that through the Roadmaster Action Plan in 2022, we did a number of speed management corridor reviews. And that consultant's report noted some measures to be implemented to increase safety and implement some speed management measures on Lake Road. So there's the physical engineering changes, and it also recommends the change of the 50-kilometer speed limit in the rural area to the 70-kilometer an hour change. The report also discussed other road improvements to the road structure and environmental improvements. So just going over that slide there, the reconfigured intersection at County Road 32 and Concession 2. It used to have a slip around right turn lane there. We've made that into an all-the-way stop T intersection. We've installed 2 pedestrian crossings with flashing lights with pavement crossing markings. Initially in the road map recommendation, it's just to install 1 in the residential area. But through the design, we decided to install another one at the conservation area, parking lot area. We also extended the 50-kilometer speed limit area across the frontage of the conservation parking lot area. That's something beyond the road map recommendations. And some of the physical engineering aspects, adding a 3-meter wide paved shoulder that access a pathway to the conservation area. And we've also narrowed the road lane width to the residential area with enhanced concrete curbing gutters. Some other small improvements on the next slide talks about when we were looking at the design, we reconfigured the old marina driveway. It was a two sort of access driveways, so it's now a single access way, so we feel that's a much safer intersection. We've also displayed, implemented two speed radar display signs. And as well, when the season is, we've taken them out now for the winter, but we have two center line speed limit signs in the residential area, so those are also measures beyond the roadmap recommendations that we have implemented. So, okay, so now we got some photos, thank you. So before and after, yeah, now you can head to that one. So yeah, so just looking southbound here. The upper left is the old intersection before with that slip around lane. So now it is a T intersection. You can see that on the bottom right, a three-way T intersection. So that's looking southbound. The next slide shows the same intersection in the eastbound direction, and you can also see some curve improvements there. Next slide, thank you. So here we're looking southbound, adjacent to the conservation area parking area. So you can just see the crosswalk and a wider shoulder through there. And also that's where the 50-kilometer speed limit area has been extended. Next, yeah, northbound. So we also get on the speed, the crosswalk implementation, and then you can see the pathway on the that's been implemented on the one side of the road. And then we go to, yeah, so looking, this is when we're entering, let's say the looking eastbound, entering the residential area. There's the new crosswalk that's been put in place there. Next slide. Here's just a view through that residential area, which is looking westbound, curbing and pathway. I think you might see a speed radar sign there, maybe not. No, we'll go to the next slide. Going around the corner, same configuration. Curbs. Here's the old Marina driveway that's changed from, as you can see up there left, the two road access, we'll say, now it's combined to be a one single access. So it's great to work with the property owners there to address that configuration. And now we're headed eastbound. Yeah, coming into the residential area. You can just see the speed radar sign that is implemented from that area. Basically, that's the transition from the rural area going into the residential area. So that's all the engineering we'll say for the traffic safety and speed management measures. Just mentioning some of the other improvements that we put in there, just to look at some of the wildlife issues out there, the turtle issues. We've included some exclusion fencing and passages through the roadway that hopefully help with the wildlife protection in that area. And then really the say the reason, or one of the main reasons why we undertook the construction is that that road has always been settling in the wetland area. So there's always a lot of road maintenance that has gone on through the years. So we've introduced a new innovative project, Symmetrix, that will a lightweight road base that will roving, and so there's some very intensive geotechnical review that our road base will be will not settle in that area, and will yeah, it'll be a longer lasting road pavement. So the next slide just provides the photos. You can see the before there on the left hand side, the after photo with some of the fencing on the side of the road, and of course you can't see the subbase there, but we'll be monitoring this area to ensure that to confirm, you know, what is the how successful is the road settlement with the traffic and so on that's on that road. And with that, that's the presentation.
before I open up to council, would you be able to speak to the fact that Lake Road was a no heavy truck route? It's no longer prohibited. And the role of county roads and the intention of that stretch of road on reconstruction, please.
Do you, Mayor Sealy, is a half loaded road all season, like it's, we do, typically there's half load roads through the spring season on a few remaining county roads, and whenever we reconstruct it, we like to make them so there is no half load restriction. And, you know, so you have seasonal load restrictions when the spring thaw happens, and in this case here, because of the conditions in the wetlands, it was all year round half load restriction. So we are hoping that with the improved road structure, that we can remove that half load restriction. It is the goal of, you know, the county that we do have truck movements on county roads, and that is what we aspire to achieve through our reconstruction work to remove half load restrictions on our roads.
Thank you. Let's go ahead.
I don't really have any questions on any of the detailed work that was done. It looks fantastic. Have you had any feedback from the community there or from the OPP as to what's working, what's not working? Is it a success?
Mayor Sealy, no, I've not had any direct feedback since the completion. We had lots of consultation prior to.
Yeah.
But you know, we sitting down with the OPP traffic units and we're looking at, I know they're doing monitoring. We're going to continue to do monitoring to see how effective the speed limit change and not the speed limit change, but just really some of the engineering work that we've done to calm the traffic through the residential area.
Yes, 3 questions. Did I hear you correctly? You're during a winter time, you're gonna take out the speed display signs?
There's Sealy, it's not to take out the speed display signs. Speed display signs will stay permanent.
Okay.
We have the center line delineators that
Oh, I see. Okay.
so we remove them
Delineators,
for
gotcha.
winter maintenance.
Okay. You mentioned in response to Council Go that you're gonna have you're gonna look at the results of the traffic and engineering results within, I guess, within a year's time. Is that gonna be shared with us as well?
There's Sealy, our direction is to report back to the roads committee in fall of 2024, so that there will be a committee report and subsequent council report, but sure, that report was been from the council.
From our member in the back there, Councillor Bomer will be sure to share that.
And last question is technical. You mentioned using new products of Ventrex. Is it possible to share the geotechnical data with our technical staff? Because we do have areas where we go through wetlands as well.
Yeah, certainly, it's a product that actually the county's up for an Ontario Concrete Award because of the use of this. Early to give us an award when we have monitored the success of it, but
You'll take it.
you know, so and it was yes, we certainly can. And so,
That'd be
yeah.
great stuff for us because we do have areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey?
Thank you. I just have a question about the amphibian mitigation fencing. Have you used that anywhere else in the county?
University, no, we haven't, so this is new for us.
Okay, so that'll be interesting to see how it stands up to winter and
Yes.
stuff. Okay, good. I look forward to hearing how that works out.
Yeah, I think my colleagues answered all the questions I have. I appreciate, I think it looks really good in terms of the construction, just the visual appeal and the process and. Yeah, I look forward just to hearing more about the monitoring thereafter in any proposed, engineering learnings that can be shared in traffic management into the future. So thank you.
And yeah, I think the county did an excellent job on this reconstruction. There was some deviation from historical reconstructions by narrowing the road and, adding the 50 km/h zone, removing that on-ramp, whatever you referred it to help mitigate traffic. It's all good work, and I don't know if we've communicated that well enough. I'd like to have a list of that so that when we get, I've received some complaints around the new design, and I think we need to show more how many changes the county made in this reconstruction to help traffic mitigation, because not being critical of county, but I don't know if maybe that messaging hasn't been getting out or they haven't chose to hear it, doesn't matter. We'll make sure we get that out better. One thing I did receive also is when you go to replace those 50 km/h ones in the center of the road, can road staff take into consideration people's access to their driveway? Had a couple calls saying I have to do this obscene maneuver to get in my driveway to go around it, so just be cognizant of that. I had two things wrote down here. Anyways, I look forward to seeing the Black Cat data on the 50 km/h zone now that we have extended that or changed that 70 to ensure that it's working as intended, but we'll see that at the county. But again, great job. I think it looks great. Crosswalks, bike lanes, and even the McClintock's tidying that up, having those two entrances there was, I'm sure, problematic. So we don't need to receive it because we received it already. Do we need to receive it again? Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Guys. We're going to close.
Kevin here and give you an update. Remember he asked us to monitor the world
Yes.
From November 8th. Second update. So I don't know if you wanted to do that.
Mr. Mitchell. I need to take a 5-minute break. We're just talking with Ken Secretary for see if we can deal with. All right, welcome back, Ms. White Fox. You have a resolution to take us into closed, please.
The council shall go into closed session under section 239 of the Municipal Act for the purpose of a confidential report regarding advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. And this is in relation to an Ontario Land Tribunal matter. And confidential report regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. And this is in relation to a human resource matter.
And do we need to clarify that we are not going into closed for?
Yes, it was noted on the agenda that we were going in respect to the County of Wellington Police Services Board, but that has been removed from the agenda.
Okay, can I get a mover, please? Councilor Goyda, thank you. Councilor Spoulos? All in favor? Carried. Okay, welcome back. Ms. White Fox, you have some resolutions for us coming out of closed.
The council moves into closed or open session, sorry, at 1:14 p.m.
Can you move for that, please? Councilor Goyda, second by Councilor Spoulos, all in favor? Thank you. All right, you have another resolution?
The council receives the confidential report regarding advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and that was in relation to an Ontario Land Tribunal matter. Confidential report regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and this is in relation to a human resource matter. And that report ADM 2023-066 entitled Shared Service Agreement, Fire Chief Responsibilities be received. And whereas the township recognizes the operational needs for a full-time fire chief dedicated to the township of Westland Fire Service and Rescue Services, the council authorized staff to commence recruitment for the full-time permanent position of fire chief, and that mayor and clerk be authorized to execute a renewal of the existing shared service agreement with the township of Center Wellington in respect to the service of a fire chief, subject to the final execution of the agreement by the township of Center Wellington. And that the renewal term be for a period not to extend beyond March 31st, 2024, subject to the completion of the recruitment process in order for the current shared fire chief to assist with the recruitment and or onboarding of the new fire chief. And whereas the township of Westland recognizes and appreciates the ongoing collaboration with the township of Center Wellington in respect to sharing services and resources, The council directs staff to send correspondence accordingly to the Township of Center Wellington Council, thanking council and staff and specifically Fire Chief Mulvey for the continued collaboration.
Thank you. Okay, mover please, Counselor Bailey, Counselor Hurst, any questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. Break needed. All right, we will break. For maximum 30 minutes. All right, welcome back. We're on to consent agenda items. Ms. Whitebox, you have a resolution.
That the consent agenda items listed for the November 29th, 2023 council meeting be received for information.
Can you move for that, please? Counselor Hurst, second by Counselor Spoulos. Any questions? Any items to be pulled out? Counselor Spoulos?
6.13.
Yeah.
6.13, in other words.
6:13. Counselor Bailey, Counselor Hurst?
No,
No. All right, we're gonna receive the remainder of those. All in favor? Carried. Counselor 6.13.
Yes, it's the municipality of Wawa has put a motion forward, a resolution rather, that the federal government increase the income amount of tax credits for volunteer firefighters from 3,000 to 10,000. Basically, the rationale is that they do all this good work for us, and based on the credit, it only works out to $450 per year, and that's very small. And then if they work more than 200 hours, it's even less. So I think I'd like to support it, so show support for our firefighters as well.
Okay, thank you. Let's move. Okay, a seconder for that. Counselor Goida, questions or comments? No, sounds like a good one. All right, all in favor? That's carried. Second. Next, we're on to finance, impact, execution of data sharing and services. Ms. Hassan. Maybe it's given difficulty.
I just started reading reports first.
Sure. So go to 9.3.1. Is it Rania
Do
here?
we have Rania?
Maybe not. Who's here that,
I can't see you. Just-
we can do 9.3.2.
No, it's not this guy.
Miss Hewler is here.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the purpose of this report is to provide my council with the statutory annual report, just updating of the progress and measures that the township has taken place to establish the multi-year accessibility plan to prevent and remove barriers to accessibility and meeting the requirements under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act.
All right, do you have a resolution, Ms. Whitebox?
That report ADM 2023-064 entitled Township of Plestinch Annual Accessibility Status Report be received for information.
Gonna move for that, please. Counselor Spoulos, second by Counselor Bailey. Questions or comments? Counselor Spoulos?
Just a question, does this report go to any government agencies?
So through you, Mr. Chair, we are required to post it online to our website and make it accessible to the public. And I believe that's our statutory requirement in terms of notice.
Okay, great, thank you.
Further? Counselor Hurst?
just a follow-up to Counselor Sapulis's question. Does the township take any advice from third-party evaluators that review the plan and policy in place and seek guidance?
So through you, Mr. Chair, and sorry, just to also finish, I probably should have clarified to Councilor Sapolis's question. In terms of reporting to the province, the municipalities is required to report every 2 years on the status. So we do statutory reporting every other year. And part of that reporting is based on our accessibility compliance in terms of our annual and 5-year multi-year report. And then to Councilor Hurst's question, we do consult with the county accessibility committee. So they do, because our population is under 10,000, we're not required to have our own committee. And so we do utilize the county accessibility committee, and we do consult with them quite often. They have changed their the way that their committee structure and meetings are being held in the last year since the new term of council, and they are requiring active participation now from each member municipality. So it's been a great change.
Maybe just one follow-up. Do we have any local residents that participate on that committee at the county level?
So through Mr. Chair, the chair of that committee is Councillor Ballmer. So he is a resident, but we will be actively seeking citizen membership with the county in the next couple of years.
Any further questions? All in favor? That's carried. I see Mrs. Sands. I mean, we're able to go back to 9.2.1.
Good afternoon, council.
Afternoon.
So report FIN 2023-028 relates to the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation execution of a data sharing and services agreement, which is a requirement of all Ontario municipalities in order to continue to use MPAC's services, including Municipal Connect and other MPAC products that we require as part of our operational service levels. I'd be happy to answer any of council's questions.
Ms. White Fox, you read the resolution, please.
That report FIN 2023-028 entitled Municipal Property Assessment Corporation Execution of Data Sharing and Service Agreement be received, and the council give 3 readings to bylaw number 2023-049, being a bylaw authorizing the entering into a data sharing and service agreement with the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation.
You're gonna move for that, please. Councilor Goida, second by Councilor Spillis. Questions, comments? Pretty straightforward. Councilor Hurst.
Just one, has the municipality done a legal review of this agreement at all?
No, a legal review was not done. However, there are several municipalities that were incorporated as part of a group who reviewed the agreement. It's also been circulated to all township staff that would be affected in order to ensure that our processes remain accurate for the requirements of the agreement. It is just an agreement that standardizes several different agreements that we've had over the years with MPAC. So we did not do a legal review for this specific agreement.
And my assumption would be that this is the same agreement that all municipalities would be subject to. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we did receive some frequently asked questions and answers from MPAC, and it is a standardized agreement that all Ontario municipalities will need to sign if they want to continue to use MPAC's products and services.
I'm good. Thanks.
Thank you.
All in favor? That was carried. I believe. Next one, 9.2.2, Mrs. Sand.
So this is just a final report regarding the 2024 user fees and charges bylaw. There's some recommendations in there based on some of the work that's been done to date, including some information regarding the reports and presentation materials that have been provided to council to date as part of user fees and charges deliberations. There's just some minor revisions for planning fees and the Puslinch Community Center fees based on previous council direction. There are also a couple of options for council's consideration in the recommendation section of the report regarding the full-time staffing presence request that township staff have made. And there is some information in the report regarding security deposit information for the Optimus Recreation Center, which we currently do not have a security deposit system in place for that facility. And there's some rationale in the report as to why. I'd be happy to answer any of council's questions.
All right, thank you. Councilor Goida.
Yeah, I don't really have any questions. I guess just based on the report, I agree with the proposed increase to the non-resident rate at the PCC, and I also agree with it talked about the hours, a full day rental and the sort of maximum hours. So with 12 hours being a full day rental, I agree with both those things. I hope that they provide some relief in terms of some of the issues that relate to the wear and tear And also just some of the time, extra time needed to clean the facility. I don't disagree that there are significant advantages to having staff presence in the facility at nights and on the weekends. I'd like to see that. That being said, to me, that's an increased service level above and beyond what we're doing now. And I welcome increased service levels when it's feasible to do so. I guess the reality is, we don't know. I don't know where our operating budget is gonna land. So I'm struggling with this increase in this service staffing level without having that information in front of me. So my real preference would be to defer this decision and look at it holistically with the rest of the operating budget. Because like I say, I'm not opposed to it. I think there's a lot of advantages. But I just don't know where we're landing, and I'm getting nervous that we keep adding and adding and adding and adding and not knowing what the end result is going to be.
I suppose.
I echo Councilor Goda's sentiment. I really want to see the final numbers before we agree to this. I do have a question of staff. Have we already made a decision to limit the usage to 150 and less?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe the previous council resolution did confirm the capacity limit change.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So I agree that we do need some staffing presence there, but certainly the operating budget will sort of determine what the costs are with the other elements and what the priorities. We can make a decision on whether this is in the where it stands in the priority list of increases.
So, two councilors have spoke already. Would you, for staff's direction, choose an option to at least prepare the budget with for the operating? So put your weight behind option 2, it sounds like, so that we can at least see the operating budget with one of these options in it. And then I would say that if we have an unexpected operating budget where there's room, we could always revert back to the more expensive option 1. I think staff would like some direction on those 2 items preferably, or what are you thinking?
So through you, Mr. Chair, and perhaps our Director of Finance could comment further, but if it is to defer it to the operating budget, I think the impacts could be shown through that process.
Okay, I'm fine with that then.
Mary may want to confirm.
Yeah, so I'm assuming then that we will present it based on the status quo from the 2023 budget, but we will incorporate what the additional tax levy impact would be if council was to agree to a 3rd facility operator as a base budget increase if council wants to approve that as part of the budget process.
Councilor Bailey?
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I was gonna suggest we put in for the option 1 and then take it out, but I like that being able to see the option later, so that's great. I just had a question. I'm trying to find it. The planning and development, 3rd-party consulting fees. Is there a mechanism in place to ensure that applicants are being billed sort of the same? I'm assuming we have more than one 3rd-party consultant, and I don't know if they charge the same amount. I'm not clear how that background works. So I just wanted to know that our residents coming in are being billed the same amount for those 3rd-party consultant charges.
So through you, Mr. Chair, they won't be. So it's going to be specific to the Planning Act application and the nature and scope of the study. So if an application, if a piece of property potentially has many significant environmental features, you know, the ecology study, for instance, is going to be much more substantial and require a much more substantial review than another. So there is going to be variation depending on the nature of the application.
Okay, so it's not based on an hourly amount. So applicant A, resident A comes in.
You and I, Mary.
Yeah, Mike, it's frozen for you too, right?
It was frozen, but I could see you moving around, so I knew it wasn't mine.
Okay, I messaged Justine and Courtney. So Justine confirmed that we have dropped connections, so we're going to go to hotspot now, so everyone will be connected again shortly.
Yeah, if I'm minimized. Okay, good. Back up and running.
Yes.
All right, sorry, we cut out there briefly. I think you were in comments. I don't think we need to repeat that. It was more council's indulgence, right? Councilor Ridley, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a question for Mary about the in regards to the 12-hour. Breaking down the cost into sort of an hourly rate, and using the 12-hour. If someone wanted to purchase another hour of rental at the PCC, is it $82.18 for an extra hour? Is that how I'm reading the report?
Sorry, I'm just gonna confirm that before I say yes. I believe that's correct, but I'm just gonna confirm it. Yes, for Hall Prime for a non-resident rental, it would be $82.18 for any additional hours beyond the 12-hour full day rental. And that would be maximum, like it would be subject to availability as well.
Great. Okay, and when you're comparing the hall rates, sorry, I'm trying to find it in the report, to the other municipalities, do they have a 12-hour cap on their rentals? Or do you know if any of those ones had a 12-hour?
We didn't go to that extent to see what the other municipalities, like what their maximum is, because their fees are very different and some of their facilities are also very different. Staff felt that the 12-hour maximum was reasonable based on the township and our service levels.
Okay, so if it said full day rental, that sort of means the same now as our 12-hour proposal. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Thanks for that clarification.
no problem.
Sure, a couple questions. I think when I went through option 1, option 2, kind of, it appeared to me like the quick math is it's the $20,000 a year new funding that's required, or a budget increase, I guess. So maybe an aspirational target, option 3 at some point in the future would be fee increases that cover that, basically, I guess is where my head was going. And again, I don't want to throw a curveball at staff in the middle of a meeting right now to just propose an option 3 off the top of my head, but I think philosophically, that's the thing where my head went. The 2 pieces that I wanted to share, I think the first one would be is in going through the staff notes, the org was having some security deposit issues. Maybe my suggestion would be to empower staff if there is a rental that has had a prior history of damage, that you empower staff to administer a damage deposit. My understanding is that that isn't the case now based on reading, and maybe I didn't fully understand all the nuance there, but to me, that seems like a reasonable expectation that staff can assess the situation and administer a fee as per their discretion. And I think the other piece is my understanding would be, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding this, these would be subject to change after 1 year when we reevaluate how the processes work with the fee change annual process. Am I understanding that right?
Yes, the user fees and charges bylaw is reviewed on an annual basis, and so we do have a chance to look at these on an annual basis.
All right. I still believe the prime ice rental is going to be too high. That hasn't garnished any traction here, so we will see with our reports next year. So my first question would be, contracts that we signed at the previous ice rental rate, say now, will we be honoring those, or once the user fee and charges bylaw is implemented, then all of the individuals that have rented ice for, say, January, February, March will be receiving new, the new rate?
No, any
Obligations.
contracts that have been created prior to January 1st, 2024 will be honored at the 2023 rates.
Okay, that's what I was asked. I'm good with waiting through the operating budget for whether we do something with a third facility operating. Can maybe explain why this was pulled out and separate? Like, why didn't we just do that from the beginning?
Sorry, could you repeat?
So why were we looking at this ahead of the operating budget? Why wasn't it included in the operating budget? Was there some sort of, not priority, but, necessity to have an operator in place? I'm trying not to jeopardize something we're trying to fix. Otherwise, it should have just been in the operating budget. We doubled it down.
So through Mr. Chair, I believe we looked at this when we were looking at our user fees and charges bylaw, and it also stemmed from the service level review report where we had talked about those service levels. So, but the way we have the draft motion right now is to defer it to operating.
Okay. So one comment is the 12-hour rental period. I think that we should grant an exception to the approved list that received the 90% discount on rentals. Well, my concern is family day. I don't know, maybe the fish fry, maybe these other things that the local groups use to set up, that the 12-hour window, they need a longer period. And I'm not sure I want to charge them, well, I guess it'd be 90% reduction of $85. But I also see the perceived pushback from the groups, the more red tape of having to come in and ask for extra hours. So is it possible to address that concern, that the groups that qualify for the 90% discount have a simpler way of getting hours beyond the 12?
Can I just speak to that? I believe the 12-hour maximum is in place for Hall Prime. So those that get there are no discounted rates for prime times. And so the 12-hour maximum was for Hall Prime days, which are on Fridays, Saturdays.
Okay, so if family day falls on a Friday, I want the optimist to be able to get the facility first thing in the morning or Saturday, whatever it may be, and not have to go through some sort of bureaucracy to get an extra few hours for setup. So
I believe the Canada Day event, and there are a few other events that are noted in the bylaw, such as the Fall Fair, the Santa Claus Parade, Canada Day, Family Day, and Remembrance Day. Those events are exempt from the rental fees imposed in this bylaw.
but it's the access to the building. They're only, so I'm assuming 12 hours also means you only have access to the building in that window. So does that make them exempt from not having access?
Ms. White Fox, do you just want to add to that?
So through Mr. Chair, I think it comes down to a scheduling sort of solution where we have to look at if there was a renter that was looking to be in the day before or the day after, just looking to make sure that our staff have time to get in before and after. So I think we could, I think we can take that away and look at it when we're scheduling around those sort of community events.
Thank you. I just don't want the complaints that I couldn't get in to set up the tables. We don't need the difficulty.
I was just gonna comment, I interpreted it to be for the 12-hour limit to just be with non-residents. Did I?
Just prime, I think the 12-hour applies, that's what Mrs. San just said, the 12-hour cap applies to the prime rental periods regardless of the status of the renter.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I see in the bylaw, that it relates to the prime times, and that's where we're seeing most of our issues as well. But Mr. Fowler can add to that if he'd like.
As long as it's understood that we're going to be somewhat flexible with our user groups so that I'm comfortable. But if it's not, then we'll either address the bylaw or,
So through Mr. Chair, we can be flexible, and one of the other things that staff noted when we were doing our analysis is that we have that hourly charge that we can charge for extra setup time. And when we calculated what the hourly charge was during our prime time for that sort of 16-hour window, it was almost half of what we would charge. So it sort of, to staff, was the prime rate was really a discounted rate when you looked at the hourly fee. So that was a big reason why we need the shift.
okay, my other comment is that I feel that the prime rate is not high enough for the hall rental. And our goal, well, it's being used as a banquet hall. If you compared rental rates between community center to community center, it's probably got par, but if you called around and queried wedding venues, you would find that the rate is higher, and at the end of the day, we're attempting to reduce the amount of wear and tear and damage on our facility. And even at, what is it, $900 to rent it, I still think that's very, very affordable. So, with everything else we're implementing, I'm relatively comfortable with seeing how that transpires into less wear and tear, but I still think that a comparison of wedding venues, if that's what our community center has turned into, and the rental rates, I'd like to see staff look into that for the next year's user fees and charges bylaw.
Can I just,
Do I have another one? Sure.
yeah, so we did increase the hall prime for non-resident rentals or commercial renters to $986 rather than the $900 that was previously recommended. So we did increase it a little bit more, but definitely something that we will keep reviewing and looking at over the next year.
Well, and that's why I was mentioning that I personally believe it's not high enough. That feeds into Councillor Hurst mentioned that maybe there's an opportunity to offset that $20,000 with a comparable wedding venue rate. Because that's what our facility has turned into. Councillor Spose,
The question is, sir, what would you think would be our good rate?
1,500? Maybe a little less.
That's where my head went.
Yeah. But if you want to leave it for a year and see, I'd like to see if we're still experiencing the amount of wear and tear with the reduction in numbers. But yeah.
I don't have a problem changing it if that's what we think is appropriate.
I can't make motions.
I can make them. What does staff think of that?
So through Mr. Chair, staff did talk sort of at length on this topic. Part of the analysis that staff did was to look at some of what these other banquet halls were doing in the area. And what we found was that they may have a like a comparable or slightly more per day rental fee, but they also would provide sort of like services around planning, food, chairs, linens. Like they sort of had a whole package that you could purchase when you rented their facility. And so the actual rental rate oftentimes was lower than what we were charging because they required you to have all these add-ons. So it became difficult to really compare apples to apples in that case. So we did look at some of our neighboring municipalities that had facilities our size, so having these larger scale events. And I would say that 980 is comparable to what we saw across the board. And in addition to that, staff are just very conscious of some of the other restrictions that we have or limitations that we have in terms of booking our facility. We have a alcohol risk management policy in place. There's some other things, and we were cognizant of not adding too many more, such as maybe a barrier in terms of cost, and then seeing our facility really reduced
Till next year.
Yeah, just sort of a little bit of a time, but we did do that analysis and are keeping an eye on sort of what that market is for those banquet halls.
I'm satisfied with staff's response.
I was inclined to question whether the comparables lined up with ours at all. I still feel that our facility is being utilized differently than most other municipalities experience, whether it's our proximity to the 401 or the urban centers. It makes sense for people to travel here to have a wedding. Does it make sense to travel to Welfare Emotions Community Center? Probably not. So that's why, and I also agree with you that it's hard to compare apples to apples. But I'm willing to wait till next year. We'll see how the wear and tear on the facility goes, and I'll be optimistic that it'll be an improvement for next year. And the deposit for the orc floor damage, that was me. Went there after basketball, or went to play basketball there, and there was a rental that had scratched the new floor, and I was pretty upset that somebody did some damage to a recently refinished floor. Credit to staff, they were able to repair it so that in-house, I believe. So it looks pretty good, but I was definitely upset that somebody had rented our facility and wrecked that floor. Should loosely use wreck, did some damage. So my comment would be that if, we're not going to be taking damage deposits, then my expectation would be that staff are monitoring the use on the floor on a drop-in frequency to catch any possible too far. So it's full-sided. Because we won't have any monies to recover if they do damage it too far. So that's just a statement.
Do we know what caused the damage?
My understanding is it was a baseball, it kills me to say this, baseball group. They were doing like a pitching clinic, and the coach, I assume it was coach, sat on a bucket that was upside down, because when you're catching pitchers, squat the whole time is hard on a bucket, and I'm sure it
Scratched it.
moved around. Now, some ownership on the person sitting on the bucket, they should have recognized what they were doing. But like I said, staff were able to manage it in-house, and I don't know if they were able to sand it or they did something, you can't tell the damage. So we have direction on the option 1 or 2, because we're gonna report back at the operating budget. Anything further you need?
So I can read what I have, if that's right. The report FIN 2023-032 entitled 2024 user fees and charges bylaw be received. That council gave 3 readings to bylaw 2023-042, being a bylaw to adopt the user fees and charges. And the council approved the increase to the non-resident fee at the Pleasant Community Center, resulting in an estimated increase in budgeted revenues of $5,374. And the council deferred the decision on increasing 2 full-time facility operators to 3 full-time facility operators, and the subsequent reduction to the part-time facility operator hours as outlined in this report, until such time that the operating budget is considered by council, and that staff be directed to incorporate the potential tax levy impact of this proposed change through a base budget increase sheet.
Awesome. Okay, move for that, please. Councilor Goyda, second by Councilor Spillis. Any further questions? All in favor? That's carried. We have Urania. If she's not here, I mean, we can just receive the report. She's in.
Hello.
Hi, Urania. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. We're just looking at your report now, so the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much through you, Mr. Mayor. So just the annual emergency management report outlining the municipal requirements that are set up in the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act and Ontario Regulation 380-04, and how the Township of Pleasant has fulfilled those requirements for 2023. I'll just quickly hit some of the high level highlights. So we're required to have a program committee, which we do, met on March 2nd, 2023, going over some of those key parts of the program, including the HIRA, the ERP, training needs, annual exercise, and pub ed. The emergency response plan, that one was passed in the fall of 2020. Training requirements, so the training requirements haven't changed since 2018, but our primary and alternates have satisfied those training requirements for this year, and you can see some of the details on that training, other training we provided. The annual emergency management exercise this year ran on November 2nd, and it was based on a cyber attack scenario, and some of those recommendations that have come out of that were collaboration. The municipal emergency control group members found the collaboration very helpful, and it was a really great opportunity for them to share in those problem-solving ideas in that incident. the second recommendation there was creating an updating plan. So given that cyber attack scenario, there were some suggestions on creating a disaster recovery plan and a service continuity plan. So we'll be working with the township to support them in that. And then just some more additional training in the incident management, the IMS structure, sorry, in the EOC. So we'll be creating some cheat sheets for the EOC there. And then in terms of Pub Ed, we continue using our Do One Thing promotion that you can see listed there per month. And then EP week was May 7th to 13th. We continue to put ads in the Wellington Advertiser. We have one coming out in December regarding that winter driving safety tips that we all need to remember again, and using that social media, radio, those typical forums. And then in terms of critical infrastructure, we're required to have a list of those in the county, including the townships. So we have that. That was updated at the EMPC meeting. And so we're currently working with County GIS to update and simplify the critical infrastructure layer. That'll be completed by the end of 2024. So the township has met those municipal requirements. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rania. Your resolution, please.
Report ADM 2023-063. 2023 Township of Whistling Emergency Management Program Annual Report be received, and the Council of the Township of Whistling accepts the annual report of the Township Emergency Management Program for 2023.
Okay, move for that, please. Councillor Hurst and Councillor Goyda.
Yeah.
Any questions there? Councillor Close.
Yeah, the acronym MECG members, they say that have both primary alternates, have the required training. As part of the exercise, the alternates also participate?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, sorry. Yeah, so the alternates are not required to participate in the exercise for compliance purposes. It's the primaries that need to, and then if the primary cannot attend, then the alternate should attend. So that's sort of how we run them, but we are able to run them with all the alternates if that's something that those members would like. That's something that we can do.
Well, I'm going to suggest that you do run with the alternates, because if our mayor can't be there, the alternate should have experience at least in a management exercise, which would be very vitally important. Do you require a motion of council for that to happen, or can you take that away?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can take that back and write it into our dashboard for the Township of Puslinch, so that next year we make sure that all the alternates are included in the exercise and the Emergency Management Program Committee meeting.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Bailey, did you have something?
Yeah, I just have a question. I think I read in the report that it said that staff were interested in the cyber attack, and it sounds like that's what some of your recent training was on. But is there ever any discussion, or do any of the themes take internet failure into account? Is that part of the power outage, or like, because that's a reasonable thing to have an internet failure, and then what do you do in that respect? So is that in the plan somewhere?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So in terms of a cyber attack specifically, that scenario, I mean, it was a very specific scenario. So it kind of talked about certain parts of internet-based programs not being accessible. So like some documents or files not being accessible, or email not being able to be used, but it wasn't a blanket internet outage. So cyber attack is pretty general in terms of a hazard. So it can include an internet outage as part of it, but it's not the only piece of that. So if we did want to see something more specific, or something that sort of exercises that kind of outage, we can add that for next year for the EMPC to review, if you'd like. But I think it is, cyber attack is really high level, so it includes an internet outage, but it's also part of one piece of many issues that can occur with that.
Right. Yeah, I guess I just figure it's inevitable, or it could happen. So it would be nice to kind of have a plan in place for internet blanket outage. I just had a second question. I know and this is again for staff too, or yourself to answer, but at the latest Wellington County Safe Communities meeting, it was mentioned that there's a grant available through the county specifically for emergency management items. So I guess I'm just wondering if you can speak to that and what options are available to purchase through this grant.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question. I've actually been working closely with Mary on the application for the township. So we are looking to fund the replacement of the generator at the community center for Puss Lynch. So it is available. The grant is available for any emergency preparedness needs. So that includes generators, but it also can include training or, shelter preparedness items like cots or blankets, AEDs, like first aid equipment, that kind of thing. And it is based between $5,000 and $50,000 in terms of the financial requests that can be made. So I know Mary could talk to some more details if you'd like to hear those.
Yes, so I can just add to that. We did really appreciate Horania's work on that with the emergency management team at the County of Wellington. We did work really collaboratively on the generator replacement. So fingers crossed we're successful in the grant funding.
That's great. Thanks for that collaboration.
Anything further? Councilor Hurst?
Yeah, just a couple things. Can you tell me how much of this emergency preparedness data, the public would be able to access, or is this for the most part exclusive to staff within the municipality?
To you, Mr. Mayor.
And I guess maybe where I'm going with this is there was a public consultation component that was in the report, so I'm just curious what that looks like.
So in terms of the emergency preparedness, correct me if I misunderstood your question, that kind of information for the public is accessible on our website. So it's just wellington.ca/emergency. So we also have the 72-hour emergency preparedness guide that we provide. Every 5 years we update it. That's sent out through the Wellington Advertiser, and then at every event that we're at, we also provide those. And we provide them at any other sort of pub ed events. If we go to schools, we'll sort of provide those in bags so they can bring them home to their families in terms of that. And then also the hazards. They're not specifically listed per municipality on our website, but just all the general hazards that we have at the county are listed on our website, so they can find more information about those. And then there's the sort of before, during, and after an emergency, what are the actions you should take listed there, as well as those 72-hour kits and that kind of thing.
Okay, thanks. So then maybe my assumption would be at the township level, there would be reference to the county materials. Is that the flow of process? Maybe that's more for staff here.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we do have a web page that's dedicated to that on our township website. We do a lot of linking to the county website. Likewise, if the county does share any social posts or anything like that, we would be sharing them.
Maybe just my last question would be can you share with us any plans of what the 2024? We saw in the report there's topics that have been identified on a monthly basis for 2023. Does that planning for 2024 started yet? And maybe my request would be whenever that happens, I think that would be of interest to me, just to hear what the training topic priorities are for the future year.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we haven't started any of the formal plans yet for 2024, but we do have a few things I can note that are in the works that will be happening in 2024. So one thing we're working on is a shelter and reception center plan that's more specific in terms of what you do when you need to open a shelter. And also within that plan, that'll include addressing township staff that would be available, or who would likely to be available during an emergency, that would have that would then be trained to assist in opening a shelter reception center. So that's part of our plans. And then also the Do One Thing campaign. We usually change it up a little bit here and there depending on sort of what we've seen in the past year. So it'll be similar for 2024, but we haven't made any final decisions on that. And then otherwise, I'm very happy to share sort of what our plans look like once those are set with council.
Thanks.
Okay. This grant program that could be up to a maximum of 50,000, is that gonna be an ongoing annual grant, or is this one-time funding?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, we don't have any information about what that grant will look like going forward. It's pretty rare to see emergency preparedness grants like this. So I would hope that yes, there would be, but I don't know at this time, unfortunately.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we have the resolution read, right? Okay. Well, thank you, Rania. All in favor? Carried. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
933 corporate work plan. Swipe box.
So through you, Mr. Chair, this is the most recent update on the council approved 2023 corporate work plan. So it just the report identifies what projects have been completed, which ones are ongoing. The projects that staff anticipate will be carried over into 2024 or deferred further if required. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sure. Mr. Guida?
I think the questions that I had were answered through the questions provided in advance, so I don't have any questions.
I'm glad to see that the site alteration bylaws come next council meeting. Given the fact that we've got a very sensitive ERO we're going to be discussing later.
Mr. Bailey?
Yeah, just a question. This proposed sign bylaw looks like it's due to happen in July. But later on in our agenda, we have an applicant who may need that updated sign bylaw. So is waiting till July appropriate, or is this something we can be bumping forward?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I believe we started the review in July. And it's due to be presented by council likely in early January. So we are in really good shape. It's an older bylaw that needed a sort of full repeal and replace, but it is coming shortly.
Everyone's not wrong. I thought that was 2024.
Gotcha. Yes, it's underway. It's almost complete.
Yes. Okay, great.
Sorry. Councilor Hurst?
No questions.
Okay, you have resolution, Ms. McFarland?
That report ADM 2023-065 regarding the 2023 corporate work plan update be received for information.
Can you move it, please? Councilor Hurst, Councilor Bailey? All in favor? That's carried. All right, 934. Fire Marquee, Ms. Whitebox.
So through Mr. Chair, this is an update from our previous presentation that we received from Chris Carrier from Fire Marquee. So council was directed staff to consult with Center Wellington and Guelph and Massa just on their experience with Fire Marquee. So that's outlined in the report. In general, it was positive feedback. Doesn't seem to be there doesn't seem to be the misconceptions around the increase in insurance rates that council had asked some questions about with Chris Carrier when he was here. There's also just some information, background information in the report, as well as the draft agreement and the bylaw to be passed, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, can we have you read the resolution, please?
The report ADM 2023-067 entitled Authorize Entering into an Agency Agreement with Fire Marquee Incorporated be received, and that mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the agency agreement between the corporation of the township of Westlinch and Fire Marquee Incorporated attached to Schedule B to the report, and that council give 3 readings to bylaw 2023-052 being a bylaw to enter into the agency agreement with Fire Marquee.
Can I move it, please? Councilor Spillis, second by Councilor Goida. Any questions or comments? All in favor? All right, that's carried. All right, we're on to 9.3.5, Mrs. Brotherton.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, this report is to provide council with proposed housekeeping amendments to the procedural bylaw. The amendments include listing council, the statutory committees and the planning and development advisory committee under section 5.1 6.15 with respect to recording, broadcasting, and or streaming, and the addition of the advisory committee under section 6.1A and the removal of section 6.1B. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. The resolution,
The council receives report ADM 2023-068 regarding the procedural bylaw housekeeping amendments. And the council gives the readings to bylaw 2023-51, being a bylaw to amend the township's procedural bylaw as amended attached to this report.
get a mover, please. Councillor Spolis, second by Councillor Bailey. Any questions or comments? All in favor? That's carried. I believe we're on 9.3.6. Ms. Brothers.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, this report is from council with a request for a sign bylaw variance for 4020 Highway 6. So it's staff's recommendation that council defer the request for the sign bylaw relief until the township has a new sign bylaw, as digital signs are currently prohibited under the existing bylaw. And staff anticipate that relief being sought through the sign variance will be addressed through the proposed sign bylaw.
The report ADM 2023-069 entitled sign variance request for 4020 Highway 6 be received, and whereas digital signs are specifically prohibited in the existing township sign bylaw. And whereas the relief being sought is intended to be addressed through the township's updated proposed sign bylaw in the first quarter of 2024, the council defer the request for relief from the sign bylaw 0991 for 4020 Highway 6 until the completion of the review of the township's sign bylaw as scheduled in the 2024 corporate work plan.
Mover, please. Councillor Hurst, second by Councillor Spolis. Questions or comments? Councillor Spolis.
With respect to the new bylaw, when the new bylaw is enacted, will staff do this automatically without having to come back to council?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yes, the application would be pending and we would re-review it with the new bylaw.
Okay, and it would not have to come back. So that's great. Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry. I have a question of this specific location. Is this on a residential property?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's a perhaps a home industry, or I'm not sure the zoning, but we can check the
I
zoning.
thought it was Brian's.
I think
No, it's
No,
not.
it's
It's
not.
south of Brian's. It's
Doesn't look very-
not where we had the contaminated issue. The fill issue, the first one, it's the property beside that.
Oh,
Yeah,
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe it's zoned agricultural.
so I have some questions around
Yeah.
this.
okay, well, that's a good.
So again, through you, Mr. Chair, the proposed bylaw, which obviously has not been in front of council yet, does contemplate some of our home-based industries, home-based businesses, and sign permissions on those sorts of properties, but it would be reviewed thoroughly through zoning and all other regulatory bylaws.
So I want,
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't want to see an 18 square meter sign on every residential lot along Highway 6. So,
if you want a good example of a sign, there's one at where Victoria Road comes out of Highway 6 in the farmer's field. It's digital. It's the same sign. So if you want to get a where Victoria Road comes out of Highway 6 north of the city of Guelph, there's a farm. If you're,
massive.
that's the sign.
Oh, okay.
So if you're,
Not to go up, okay.
let's give you an example. Sorry, where was I? You, were you speaking? Who was speaking?
Me.
Did you?
Okay, I guess I just wanted to, to understand the zoning and get a little more understanding on who, why, what purpose of the sign. So if it doesn't come back to council and it just gets vetted through staff.
We have to approve the bylaw first, the new bylaw. We'll see it, right?
yes, through Mr. Chair, you'll see it, and again, we are looking at this through the lens of economic development as well, just with our current bylaw being so restrictive with businesses. And so understanding that agricultural properties in the township do potentially have home industry and home businesses, that whole discussion will form part of the new sign bylaw and what is appropriate in what areas.
And taking into consideration dark sky.
We have that is incorporated already, yes.
City of Guelph is looking at considering that.
And
so.
plan subdivision.
All on the list. Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Hurst.
All the way to a bylaw to review, but at a high level, I kind of look at what's the long-term image of our community and is this included? And Councillor Bailey's zoning inquiry. I certainly have had one, if it's zoned agricultural, so we start seeing commercial uses. I'd like some guidance on this moving forward, so probably based on what I'm hearing today is the day for that conversation, and wait for a while.
Zoning compliance is a big part of that, but that's not for today. What's cleaner, deferring this or denying it today? Because they don't have they don't know who they are. That's maybe not a true statement. I do actually know who the applicant is. If we defer this, is there potential that they could appeal that deferral? And then it go to some LPAT and then they impose this on, like, I don't want any of that. So I want the cleaner version, either decline or defer.
So through you, Mr. Chair, deferral is the best route that staff are recommending because there's limitations around what can be brought for appeal. Given that our official plan does not contemplate signage, this is why our council deals with this request and not our committee of adjustment, for instance. So there is no appeal mechanism built into our sign bylaw. So we would suggest deferring it and letting that review take place once the sign bylaw is approved.
Okay. I can leave my comments there then.
So just a question, so if the new sign bylaw comes into play, then this particular sign doesn't fit within the parameters of that, it would still have to come back to us for a bylaw variance request, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So, okay.
So,
Potentially, if it doesn't meet the provisions of the zoning bylaw, there could be multiple relief sought. But at this point, this bylaw sort of was the stop at this point, yeah.
okay. So we're deferring. Any further questions before I call the vote? All in favor? That's carried. Right, 9.37. Ms. Patterson.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this report is provided council with a recommendation to streamline the consent agenda section of council's agenda to only include new support resolutions. The purpose of this recommendation is to streamline council's review as well as reduce staff preparation time.
Did I skip some? No.
No, you're good.
Okay, sorry. Anyways, thank you. Do you want to do a resolution?
That report 23 -070 entitled streamlining consent agenda items be received, and the council approves the following criteria with respect to the inclusion of resolutions of support under section 6 consent agenda on the council agenda as follows. That's resolutions of support may be filed in accordance with the township's record retention bylaw rather than included on the council agenda if the support resolution is regarding a topic that has already been considered by council and does not include new information.
Thanks. Gonna move that. Councilor Hurst, second Councilor Willis. All right, questions, comments, Ms. Patterson?
I'm just trying to understand what this means.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, for instance, if council was to see something on their agenda and they passed a motion of support, for instance, the one that we did today, if next agenda or the one following, we saw more of those support resolutions coming through, staff would consider those already being dealt with and would not include them on your agenda.
Okay, that's good. Yep. Good, all in favor? That's carried. 9.3.8.
That's being deferred. It
Because
was
I don't
through-
have anything for that
Yeah,
one.
it was through the addendum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Took me 3 hours to download, so I didn't do anything. Oh yeah, it says on this one, this copy I have, it says deferred. All right, so then we have priority properties intention designation 9.39.
Yes, through me, Mr. Chair, this report is to seek council's direction related to the intention to designate properties listed in Schedule A through Q of the report, in accordance with the properties that were identified by council in March of this year. Just a little bit more information, there are 2 properties that staff are completing further consultation, with the city of Guelph and the county of Wellington that were identified on the list, which is not.
Okay. All right, any resolutions?
That report ADM 2023-072 entitled 2023 property priority properties intention to designate be received and that the council of the township of West Lynch state an intention to designate the properties identified in the report pursuant to section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And that staff be authorized to proceed with notice requirements as outlined in section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act and in accordance with the Township Ontario Heritage Act alternative notice policy. And where no objections are received within the prescribed time period, that staff be directed to prepare and provide designation bylaws for council's consideration and enactment.
Who moves for that, please? Councilor Godak, Councilor Lewis, comments or questions?
I just would like to say, to the Heritage Committee, this is an enormous amount of work that has been done, so, and in a very short time frame. So great work to all of the members of the committee who have, and staff who have been working on doing that. I know like Bill 23 introduced all these new rules, but it's nice to see that the Lynch is on top of it and ahead of the game. So thank you.
Yeah. Councilor Lewis?
No, I echo Councilor Goda's comments. Just a question, how many more of these do we got coming before we're through?
So through Mr. Chair, about the same amount in 2024.
Councilor Bailey?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. The listing on here didn't have, like, for example, 32 Brock Road. It didn't say north or south. So I know it says it within the notice of intent to designate. So just if we're, for any future listings, it would be helpful for me anyway, to know if it's north or south. I was trying to Google map them all and it would say, do you want north or do you want south? And I'd have to try to figure out which direction. So I just made a list of the ones that were missing the directions. Maybe I can just.
And
that
that's
on to
what
staff.
yeah.
For the address of 4492 Watson Road South, I believe that's the Badenoch Community Center. If there's any correspondence, could I request that you CC it to me, since I'm the secretary of the board there, because I think the board would like to know what's going on with the building, where I'm sure the County of Wellington is being notified, but the board won't know what's happening. So I'm just wondering if correspondence can come through me, if you can just CC me on that.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we're still actively working with that, with the county on that one, just because it is a public building. We want to make sure whatever's designated doesn't maybe preclude any upgrades or renovations that might be required in the future. We will confirm with the county that we can include someone other than the property owner on those notifications, and then we can include you.
Okay.
Yes.
The board's very active within that. And I don't know if you need any information about that facility, like the board is a very good resource.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's great. We'll just get that sort of an authorization from the owner, and then we can start those conversations for sure.
Great. And then I just had a question. I noticed within a lot of the report for each structure, it mentions other properties within the notice of intention. So it might say, this is the property, this is why it's important, these are the features, and nearby we have this property and this house and this house and this house. So I'm just curious why other properties are mentioned. And if they're mentioned, does that mean they're significant and we should be adding them to our list of designations?
So through you, Mr. Chair, and if our clerk has anything to add, but a big part of the Ontario Heritage Act and the designation is the context around the properties. So that could be other houses in proximity, buildings. It could be even something like we've seen a tree laneway be very significant, and moving that property out of that context would sort of jeopardize those attributes associated with it. So oftentimes you will see sort of references to other landmarks noted.
Okay, so just because they're in there doesn't mean we're going to be pulling them out then. Okay, it just might be for context. Okay, and then one of the other things that was mentioned, caught my attention, was there was reference to cemeteries. Do cemeteries need to be designated to be protected? Do we know?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and we would have to look into this further, but there are care and maintenance obligations when it comes to cemetery under the bereavement authority and related legislation. So there would be some, I think, protections there already.
But staff can certainly look further into that. I just wonder some of the features within a cemetery have some significance. This great. Staff can look into that, that would be great. That's it.
Councilor Hurst, you want more houses on your list?
We're gonna keep adding them if you're willing. Just honestly, just an acknowledgement to staff, both current and past, who made a summer student that put a lot of time and effort into this past year. So yeah, no, I'm just like, there's a lot of resources at the staff level that went into this, and I just want to acknowledge that.
We sent a nice letter thanking the summer students out of the line. They volunteer, don't they?
They were paid position, but we did provide Nicholas a send off and sort of a luncheon and that
Nice.
sort of thing.
Okay, good. All right, anything further? All in favor? All right, now we're on to 9.4.1. Is he back? Maybe Ms. Heater could present then?
The purpose of this report is to provide council with an update on the building department third quarter report for all building permits issued from July to September of 2023.
The resolution, please.
Yep, that report, building 2023-004 entitled Building Department Third Quarter Update, July to September 2023, be received for information.
Need a mover for that, please? Councilor Hurst, second by Councilor Spillis. Questions or comments from members of council?
I think this is awesome to see, a huge influx. Not just in the permit fees, but I'm guessing in the development charges as well that will come. So to me, this demonstrates that developers see value in coming to Portland. I think that this is a good news story.
Any further? No, all in favor? All right, that's carried. 10.2. The resolution, please.
Council received correspondence item 10.2 regarding the Grand River Conservation Authority 2024 draft budget for information.
Need a move for that, please? Councilor Hurst, second by Councilor Goida.
Yeah.
Questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? That's carried. All right, 10.3, Swipe Box resolution, please.
The council received correspondence item 10.3 regarding the annual monitoring report and peer review for Capital Paving Incorporated pit license 20085 for information.
Need a mover for that, Councilor Bailey. Councilor Spillis, questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. All right, 10.4, Swipe Box.
The council received correspondence item 10.4 regarding the Mill Creek Stewardship 2023 Ranger report for information.
Need a mover for that, Councilor Goida, second by Councilor Spillis. Any questions or comments?
I think it's a great report, really, outlines what they've done. So just I'd like to pass on the gratitude to the Mill Creek organization.
Councilor Bailey.
I'm wondering if you can ask the Rangers to come and do a presentation to our youth advisory.
Oh,
I just see some future Ranger potentials
Yeah.
that sit around our youth table, so I think they do really great work. It was neat to see all the different projects they've done and the tours that they've got to do, and anyway, if we can reach out to them and see if they would present to our kiddos, that'd be great.
the Swipe Box says that's possible, so. Anything further? All in favor? Carried. All right, 10.5, we have ERO 0197636. We have a resolution for that one.
So right now it's on the table just to receive for information, but I know that there was some information provided to council and Councilor Tsoukalos has drafted a motion for consideration.
Let's read the one for information and then we'll just go around and.
That council received correspondence item 10.5 regarding the ERO 0197636 proposed regulatory amendments to encourage greater reuse of excess soil.
Move for that, please. Councillor Bailey, second by Councillor Spillis. All right, questions or comments? Councillor Goida?
The only, I know Councillor Spillis has a resolution already prepared. The only thing that I would add in watching the information that was provided. One of the things that was said that caught my attention was that and I believe this was a member of the MECP that said this, that the intention is to enable reuse without an ECA. The expectation is what is being sent to the manufactured, what is being sent there or manufactured there is a product that is usable. They have to demonstrate that, but the MECP doesn't oversee that process. So that kind of caught me a little bit off guard because it doesn't appear anyway, that there's any mechanism incorporated into this
For compliance.
for, I guess, compliance or enforcement, either one. So I wasn't sure if I don't believe that was part of that draft resolution, but perhaps that's something that we should consider adding.
Are you, or if I go to the other ones?
Absolutely.
And then that might amend, who knows?
Yeah, no,
your pitching?
my motion's, a friendly, accept all friendly motions, friendly amendments, right?
Yeah, Councillor Bailey?
So essentially what I just did is went through the email responses and the, what's this one? The Lake Erie region one. So I'm sure it's what Councillor Spillis has based his motion off of. And I wrote down 7 different points that I pulled out of those 2 comments. So I don't know if we want to see the motion up and then I can add
Sure.
my
Well,
7 to it.
I just want to give everybody a quick chance and then he'll do his motion and we'll go through it. Councillor Hurst?
Briefly, just concerns with, minor exceptions turning into massive, misuse of an exemption. So I'll look forward to Councillor Spillis's amendment.
Yeah, and I have concerns with these being located within the ARA license because we have no jurisdiction. We haven't had great experience with MNRF and our compliance concerns around aggregate operations, and to add to it would be concerning. And the ECA I didn't completely understand, but the exemptions was worrisome because I didn't understand it. It wasn't explained well enough, so I'll have you read you.
I was wondering, could you flash that on the screen? Easier to amend, add, whatever.
Zoom it in. I can switch it back in.
Okay, so basically, the first part is we received it. We also received a Lake Erie Source Protection. Also, a Lake Erie Source Protection Committee reports online type of things going to be discussed tomorrow. Basically, it was for information. The staff have already sent in the comments. And I go on to say, we do not have a water supply, municipal water supply, and accordingly are concerned with the protection of groundwater for well water. And I go on to say, be resolved that township supports the comments provided by the GRCA staff, does not support exempting aggregate reuse depots and small liquid soils depots operation from a waste environmental compliance approval, does not support recycling asphalt at any sites, including ARA regulated sites, without having a properly designed holding facility to prevent the leaching of asphalt contaminants, ultimately the groundwater, and does not supply reuse opportunities for soil impacted soil. And this resolution before in response to our posting to Minister MOECC, Minister MNRF, and Area MPP Ray, and Speaker Arnott. My concern is that we're one of the few municipalities in Southern Ontario that do not have a municipal water supply. And we're also one of the few municipalities that are also very close to the 401. And our township would be a magnet for all these reuse facilities to be stockpiled. I think we got to get on here and make our point known that we have really concerns, to make them aware that we have a groundwater, concern, and there were agricultural, community. We do not need these things coming here. We've already had problems with excess soil being dumped on illegally, and we're dealing with something at the Ontario Land Tribunal right now that's actively happening. And something like this may legitimize all those uses in a township, and we just can't allow that to happen. The jeopardy of our groundwater is at stake, and also our soil for growing crops.
All right, Councilor Greta?
Yeah, I thank you, Councilor Scholes, for putting this together. I did just want to sort of highlight one point. In the resolution, it says the township does not support recycling of asphalt on any site. And again, from the information that was provided, one of the things that was stated was that asphalt, specifically asphalt, did not fall under this regulation. So I'm not sure if that makes a difference, because asphalt, glass, concrete are not excess soil. So they don't apply under this regulation.
Well, my concern was when I saw the seminar or webinar that the mayor attended, they were talking about recycled asphalt. And for me, it like sort of came into an aggregate reuse depot.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, I know. So I was really confused on that. I read it and I read it and I reread it, and I said, okay, to be safe, let's put it in.
So, planning world. I feel that the processing of recycled asphalt fits somewhere in the planning world in the industrial zone. Because one of these meetings I went to, I'm certain I was in the presentation. What they're trying to accomplish is find a new home for these. So I kind of agree with Councilor Goyda that, we does not support an asphalt recycling. It's considered an industrial use. So would it be appropriate in our industrial area? Possibly. So that blanket statement of actually it might be problematic. Now, can we word that so that ARAs, without the proper zoning? I don't know.
Well, I said without having a properly designed facility, we can add into the same
Zoning.
without proper design and within the appropriate zone area.
Because if they're in the industrial area, paying industrial taxes, and if they fit the planning world, then they should be permitted, right?
So Madam CEO, so after the groundwater design in the appropriate zone area.
Does that help in where you were?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with what is being said at all. I just don't want to be commenting on, I guess my worry is if we're commenting on something that isn't part of this anyways, does that make it look like our comments aren't valid?
Sorry, say that again.
Well, her concern is that asphalt doesn't seem to be in this ERO. And
well,
so under the regulations, under the section B that talks about aggregate reuse depots, it says these facilities would only accept excess soils that can be reused, blah, 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 and does not include glass, concrete, asphalt, etc.
I think I am. So through you, Mr. Chair, as we've been working through our site alteration bylaw, we've been analyzing the excess soil regs, and it seems to align with what you've just read in that the definition of fill under the excess soil regs does explicitly excludes asphalt, concrete. That's not fill under the excess soil regs. It's considered waste. So I'm also trying to understand how then it can be reused under these proposed new changes, and where that would be appropriate. And in my mind, if it's being classified through the excess soil regs as a waste material and not a fill material, then to the point we've just added, it would need to be in the appropriate zoned area. We would not want to see that necessarily going into an aggregate site. It would be a disposal site, an industrial site where the quality of the fill would match. But again, I think where it's coming from is that it's not included in the definition of fill or excess soil under the excess soil regs specifically, and recycled asphalt, concrete, glass, that sort of thing is a waste. That may just add
I'm
confusion.
happy having it in here. I just don't want, I guess what I'm concerned about is they're gonna read these comments and
So it doesn't apply?
it doesn't apply, so these comments are valid. Which maybe that's, I have no idea how they.
I share with you what you're saying. I read that initially, and I listened to the webinar the mayor was on. And they're talking about recycled asphalt, and I'm going, am I missing something here?
And I don't disagree. It's very confusing because that seems to be where the conversation goes.
Okay, is there somewhere in there that we should highlight that our aggregates, that their sites within Pulsonich Township, the majority of them are below the water table? And hosting this recycled use has potential to infiltrate the water table directly. So what I'm thinking they're envisioning is an aggregate operation that's above the water table, somewhere out in the middle of the country. The risk is low to impact the drinking water. However, in Pulsonich, almost all of our aggregate sites are below the water table operations, thus allowing easier contamination from any runoff. Is it worth highlighting that to them?
But we could highlight to them, but then what I have in there without having a properly designed holding facility. So are you saying you still agree with having a proper holding facility, even though the aggregate operations are below the water table?
Well, I would be, as long as somebody
Okay,
qualified,
yeah, that's fine. So
would
that
say it
makes
was
sense.
safe, right?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
Is that okay to put the whereas statement just before?
Yeah, that's.
Well, you can tie it into the other.
Yeah. Wait and see what's going on up there.
I feel there'd be, sorry to jump the queue here, the other two, Councillor Bailey and Councillor Hurst, but I think it'd be valuable putting a statement in this saying that, and Mr. Fowler could speak, is he still on the call or is he gone? I asked Mr. Fowler about our own, reused asphalt, how we manage our old paved roads when we redo them. And Mr. Fowler, can you maybe speak to council if we produce recycled asphalt that needs to be shipped off site, or how we manage our recycled asphalt?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, currently all of our road reconstruction does not involve trucking away the used asphalt. It's currently pulverized and mixed into the granular A for our sub base. The only areas you would find us maybe being required to remove and dispose of excess asphalt would be in our residential areas such as curb and gutter, where the curb is at a set height and we have to return the road to that set height. So that would require removing the asphalt and a new layer being put down. So in our rural sections, it's just pulverized and combined into the sub base. Our built up areas would require removal and disposal. Usually the winning contractor would take it back to their asphalt plant for recycling.
So where I'm going, thank you, Mr. Fowler. So where I'm going with this is that here's another example of the rural happen to subsidize urban centers. Urban centers are creating the majority of this recycled asphalt. So I feel council should be asking the province to legislatively mandate these urban centers to manage their own, or at least implement a recycled asphalt program. Because right now it sounds as though they want to find a home for it out in the rural at a site somewhere. So that's kind of where I was at. Anyways, let me just skip to Councillor Bailey. Did you have something to add?
well, like, I think the comments that I've pulled out of the GRCA are covered by the statement that says we support the comments by the GRCA. So I don't think I need to highlight what those were. And then I just pulled 3 out, and I'm just looking, a lot of them talk, or the one talks specifically about salt impacted soil. Anyway, I don't know, Courtney, if you want to just pull the 3 up. The number 5, 6, and 7. And these are the comments that AMO submitted. Yeah, you just say we support.
I thought that was not submitted yet.
I don't know if it was submitted yet or not.
When I
You
dropped
drafted it as draft, yeah. So again, I don't know what we do with draft comments, but I just pulled 3 out that I thought were important. The first one preface is AMO is concerned about monitoring and compliance of the affected soil management operations. And then I go on to say the exemption from an ECA and the increase of volume of soil must be balanced by appropriate oversight and enforcement to ensure that operators are following their obligations under the Environmental Protection Act and other relevant legislation and policies. The province needs to ensure that strong monitoring and an enforcement regime is in place. That's the first comment.
So were those all of AMO's concerns?
That
Or
was one, that was just one I pulled out.
is there any of their concerns that you don't support?
Not really, I just didn't know if they were relevant to Plus Lunch, so I just pulled out ones I thought, but no, I thought they were all good.
So we could just endorse the AMO concerns and attach them. Could we not do that? Or would- how
I'm
do you-
just worried because they're draft.
Oh, they're draft.
Yeah,
Well, you could put it in the resolution that we support the draft, no,
We could.
or. You know, what, just,
the second one was the province should consider establishing a setback from agricultural areas where salt impacted soil would not be permitted.
just pull the one she, sorry, just pull the one she wants and add it to ours.
Yeah.
3 at the bottom, I think, for the email that we was calling.
No.
It should be there. In the
No. And then the third one, just read it out loud. The proposed changes would, it maybe said should require. Anyway, mitigation of potential adverse impacts to the water body. However, it's unclear if there would be a reporting obligation for this type of soil storage or any monitoring at the soil sites. The province needs to ensure that there is an adequate monitoring and enforcement process in place.
Those last 2 things you can delete, is that just?
Yeah, delete the last two. Those were just important too. I mean, there's,
So you'll have to move them up at some point, right? Above the,
Yeah. So we can
integrate them somehow.
Yep. If we like these comments, I can just.
does council have any problem with the rest of your council? I don't know, either. I think it's good.
integrate them,
I
but
can integrate them. I just would prefer to do it on my screen, so I'm not.
so I take them far away.
Yeah.
So also, council, what are your thoughts on Ms. White Fox adding a component of requesting the government to enact legislation to require the source of the asphalt, recycled asphalt, to implement a management plan? Thoughts?
Sorry.
Yes.
Asking the province to mandate through legislation, or however that probably one word, that the source of the recycled asphalt, so the urban centers, as I'm labeling them, implement an asphalt management plan, or because we want them to deal with it themselves. Not just put it in a dump truck and ship it to West Lunch. Right, so that was part of that presentation, was the urban centers weren't adopting the standards that permitted the use of it, so I feel that if we hold the producers accountable, that will help. What are your thoughts, Councilor Spillis?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, the township does support the province enact legislation. To require large municipalities, including MTO, to establish policies to maximize recycling of their asphalt.
Require producers of asphalt, sorry, even nothing about that word again, Councilor.
Yeah, that support the province to enact legislation.
Yep.
To require. Let's say generators of recycled asphalt.
And generators not produce one second.
You want
So requiring
generators?
generators, because yeah, if you're a producer, they might think of that as the person that's
Exactly.
processing the
Yeah.
recycle.
Yeah.
Generator and.
Yeah.
Of recycled asphalt.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councilor, Bose, go
Yeah,
ahead.
to establish policies to maximize. Recycling of their asphalt.
Like at approved, or like
No, no.
within their municipality or within their
Within their jurisdiction would be good, yes, absolutely.
I think that.
With respect to item number 2 there, our setback from agriculture areas, you perhaps could substitute that up in, one of my motions where I said that, we did not support. Was not support enhanced reuse opportunity soil, big soil, so you can perhaps replace that about, what, rest of the council suggests is better word.
We should have one or the other. We can't.
Yeah,
have
you
both.
can't have both, yeah.
What's the, other than salt is not great for drinking water, what's the big red flag on salt impacted soils?
Or you can't grow crops and so.
Yes, the farmer.
It's
Oh, yeah.
difficult to grow crops in heavy salt spills,
Yeah,
especially in horticulture, that's a big issue, but everywhere. Unproductive soil.
There's a
Well,
whole
yeah.
big section here on salt impacted soil.
So I would suggest I could replace that other statement up there, I would think my sense. Be more encompassing.
Either or, one's a little more general and one's more detailed.
Yeah,
yeah,
How about you just say specifically in agricultural areas? Or something. Not supporting industries of trees or salt. Especially in agricultural areas.
well, except as setback from agriculture areas. Appropriately setback from agriculture areas.
They need a defined setback.
And could brackets to be defined or something brackets to be defined by province. You have to setbacks, put in brackets to be defined by province.
why do we have the 3, the 4 at the bottom below the last bullet part? Like you're gonna.
I have
you're
to
gonna move that?
incorporate them in, I'm having trouble doing it on this sort of third screen, that's all.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So you'll polish it later.
I will bring it back and I can put them up there in about,
Yeah,
like 30 seconds and I can. If we're okay with this, I'll keep this one out, number 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd have that all messed up in a heartbeat if I was doing that. Okay, is there any other comments? And
I got one, just after, on the one you just did, agriculture, I would add agriculture and environmentally sensitive areas, which kind of gonna capture your wetlands and your such.
I think that would encompass drinking water proximity.
tidy it up and then I can read it out. Yeah.
I think so. One thing I want to add is you forward it to TAPMO as well for circulation to its members.
You can add AMO if you wish.
Yeah, email Roma, so the whole acronym library out.
Did that, sorry, did Pat Mo make comment?
No, because it came out October 27th. And I didn't subscribe to that. I didn't find out about it until I had that webinar. And the TAPMO meeting that we scheduled was passed. So. Did I can't recall if I sent an email to Kim to have it circulated or not, but this will. It's done, right?
So you got a big update.
I got one. I actually have something. Just found out about it yesterday. All right. Did you go on before you start reading?
Okay. The council received correspondence item 10.5 regarding the proposed regulatory amendments to encourage greater reuse of excess soil. And whereas the township of Westland is in receipt of ERO posting 01976636 proposed regulatory amendments to encourage greater use of excess soil. And whereas Lake Erie Source Protection Region staff will be presenting an information report entitled SPC 231106 proposed regulatory amendments to encourage greater reuse of excess soil to the Lake Erie Source Water Protection Committee, which outlines their comments submitted to the province regarding this ERO. And whereas the township does not have a municipal water supply and accordingly is concerned with the protection of its groundwater or well water. And whereas the majority of aggregate operations in the township of Westland include below the water table extraction, be it resolved that the township supports the comments provided by the GRCA staff and that the township does not support exempting aggregate reuse deposits and small liquid soil deposit operations from a waste environmental compliance approval, an ECA. That the township does not support recycling of asphalt on any sites, including ARA regulated sites, without having a properly designated holding facility to prevent the leaching of asphalt contaminants ultimately into the groundwater in the appropriately zoned area. And further, that the township does not support enhanced reuse opportunities for salt impacted soil except as appropriately set back to be defined by the province from agricultural and environmentally sensitive areas. And that the exemption from an ECA and increase of volume of soil must be balanced by appropriate oversight and enforcement to ensure that operators are following their obligations under the Environmental Protection Act and other relevant legislation and policies. The province needs to ensure that strong monitoring and enforcement regime is in place. And that the proposed changes would require mitigation of potential adverse impacts to the water body. However, it is unclear if there would be a reporting obligation for this type of soil storage or any monitoring of these soil types. The province needs to ensure that there is an adequate monitoring and enforcement process in place. And that council supports the province in enacting legislation requiring generators of recycled asphalt to establish policies to maximize recycling of their asphalt within their own jurisdiction. And that this resolution be forwarded to the ERO posting, the Minister of the MOECC, TAPMO, AMO, the Minister of MNRF, and Area MPP Ray and Speaker Arnott.
One thing I was thinking we should add is that the municipality is not supportive of just don't start typing yet, but the area sites hosting this use because we don't have authority within the license boundary. So I want to obviously word that better, but that's what I brought up on the webinar is that we're not supportive of it due to the fact that under the Aggregate Resources Act, municipalities do not have jurisdiction over compliance. Because what's going to happen is they're going to start operating inside the area license. And if MNRF doesn't inspect and doesn't enforce, we have no tools, no ability to do anything other than complain to MNRF. So how could we word that so that we don't support it?
through you, Mr. Chair.
Perhaps we could have a whereas, yeah, that's. okay.
So, whereas municipalities have no authority, jurisdiction or enforcement ability where ARA licenses exist, and just include that in our last whereas.
And recycling of asphalt is an industrial use. That's, I want that in there too, because it's a tax shelter. They put it inside the ag operations, it's a tax shelter, because then they pay. We won't get into that conversation, but we're,
So whereas municipalities have no authority or enforcement abilities, within ARA licensed areas.
for compliance concerns. That makes sense.
Regarding compliance concerns. Or like our regulatory bylaws don't exist either. It's not just their ARA licensing. We're sort of shut out in
Yeah.
general.
Maybe not compliance, but regarding operations. We don't have any.
Regarding aggregate operations. Okay,
So what I want to touch on is that if they're hosting the asphalt, recycled asphalt. Instead of saying aggregate operations, I would say whereas municipalities have no authority of enforcement abilities within the area or area licensed areas. And then you could switch to,
Mhm.
how are we gonna say it, the recycled asphalt. Well, they're gonna get the same consideration, so how do we word that?
so within ARA licensed areas, including any accessory uses such as asphalt recycling. Okay,
Yeah.
including any accessory uses to the ARA or approved under the ARA and zoning, or approved under the ARA license, such as a recycled asphalt facility.
Depot, called depot.
Mhm. And then that's the end of the whereas, and then we
And
kind of,
Can you put?
yes, sorry.
Should we mention that the recycled asphalt depot is an industrial use or not? Or just leave
Such
it?
as an industrial use,
Yeah,
such as an industrial use.
industrial use process? No, I don't know, yeah. You want to put another as in there, but there's a lot of as.
Industrial recycled asphalt
acids.
depot use, there we go.
Okay, maybe just.
So just that we've added a whereas, it's right under our last whereas, where we talk about the municipality having below the water table extraction. Whereas municipalities have no authority or enforcement abilities within ARA licensed areas, including any accessory uses approved under the ARA license, such as an industrial recycle asphalt depot use.
It goes into what be resolved or. At least we've said it. Clear as mud? You got a mover for that? Do we have a mover? Councilor Willis, I think you moved yours and this is all friendly amendments, but
Absolutely.
we'll just. Seconder, Councilor Bailey. All right, do we need to go through? 400th time?
No, we don't.
All right. Oh. So it is what it is. Okay. Believe we're on to. All reports, is that correct? Somebody correct me. Yeah. Received an email from Ted Arnett's office. That they're looking to help facilitate a meeting with the MTO minister, new minister of MTO. And so that's great news. It's just kind of came out of the blue. I think Mr. Arnett maybe saw the minister and asked him if he'd meet with myself. And apparently they've agreed. So we're working with his assistant to schedule a meeting down at Queen's Park. So I know right now, which is great. So we get in front of the minister for a few minutes and Maybe they have an update, maybe, who knows, so.
So are they preparing the agenda or are you being asked?
I believe they are. That was my question. I asked if, council had requested this meeting or not, and, it was, that Mr. Arna had facilitated the meeting, so. Maybe it's just a meet and greet, maybe it's an update, I don't know, but I'll keep you stay tuned, so. I did mention to them, I said, are you wanting this after the Christmas break or before? I said, next week, I actually don't have any meetings, which is very short notice for everyone, but I said I could make something work for next week. I haven't checked my inbox today, but, anyways, I foresee it being in the new year, but if not, I'll bring you an update on the 20th. Nobody else is working on the 20th. All right. Anything from the members here?
No.
No. Ready? Yeah.
It was alluded to in our delegation, but we had our Wellington County Safe Communities meeting a week or two ago, and they were looking for a co-chair. And so I threw my name in the hat and got voted in as the chair for that, so we'll see what that brings in. What I'm noticing at that level is, you might have heard, for example, they're running this great campaign for kids in Wellington County, but our Puss Lunch, so 100% of our Puss Lunch high school kids were not part of that, campaign that they did on road safety. And so I think I need to help bring a voice and make sure that our Puss Lunch kids are getting included in some of these events that are happening within Wellington County, because there's a difference between Guelph Police running programming and OPP, running the programming, and so they weren't aware. Turns out Erin has the same issue, so all the Erin kids go into Guelph for high school. Well, none of those kids were getting, that safety messaging as well. So anyway, that was the first thing, and I'm gonna just try to push for some more Muslim representation and stuff like that there. And then we had so Crime Stoppers and OPP came to Aberfoyle School and did it's called 555 presentation, but it was about cyber safety, human trafficking. Councillor Goida attended, so thanks for coming. I think it was a great presentation. The consensus around the room was, why haven't we been talking about this more? Why, how can we talk about this more? We need to be getting a lot of this message out. So I think local safe communities committee, we're going to try to host, whether we host the same one again, or we just build on and do a different presentation that includes the kids, but we're going to try to continue some of that in the new year. So that was successful for our first hosting of a presentation. And I noticed, at Victoria Road and 34, they've already put in the left turn signal. So I just wanted to say thanks to Wellington County for being so quick on that left turn. So that'll get the traffic flowing a little more, hopefully.
Just in time for them to see.
That's why I thought the timing was a little.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention that the Santa Claus parade happened on Sunday. It was a great turnout. I saw most members of council there, and there was a lot of people on the side of the road. A lot of people. I helped collect some food, and the buggy, whatever it was quite full. So thank you to staff that helped. They allowed the use of this. Facility, and had the Murph ready to go, and the Optimus for cooking a lot of hot dogs. And I don't know if Tim Hortons donated the hot chocolate. It appeared that way. But everybody gets a free hot dog and a hot chocolate after the Santa Claus parade. The weather held off. Started to rain a little bit after its completion, but all in all, a good turnout. So thank you to everybody involved that helped out. Sorry for not catching that. Anything else? We have a resolution to receive those council reports, moved by Councillor Bailey, second by Councillor Hurst. We're just flying.
Yep.
All in favor? That's carried. We have bylaws.
The following bylaws meeting is read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2023-042 being a bylaw to adopt the 2024 user fees and charges and to repeal bylaw 2022-044. Bylaw 2023-049 being a bylaw to authorize entering into DSSA with MPAC. Bylaw 2023-050 being a bylaw to appoint the deputy treasurer for the township of Puss Lunch. Bylaw 2023-051 being a bylaw to amend the township's procedural bylaw as amended. And bylaw 2023-052 being a bylaw to authorize entering into an agency agreement with Fire Marquee Incorporated.
Okay, move that, Counselor Hurst, second by Counselor Goida. All in favor, it's carried. Any announcements? Seeing any? All right. Any business arising from the closed session? Notice of motion. New business? Affirmatory bylaw?
That the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council, bylaw 2023-054. Being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council for the corporation of the township of Woodland at its meeting held on the 29th day of November, 2023.
Can I get a mover, please? Counselor School, second by Counselor Hurst, all in favor? Carried. Before we go, Mr. Fowler. Any inclination of when the ice will be in at the Murph? Personally,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will check with Mother Nature and get back to you as soon as possible.
I wouldn't expect a different answer. Thank you. All right, and adjournment.
That council hereby adjourns at 3:40 p.m.
All in favor? I don't know. We have a mover. Me, no. Counselor Bailey, Counselor Hurst. Adjournment, all in favor. Thank you. Good job, everyone.